It's time, folks, to welcome you all to Chapter 3 of MarcelFest. So those of you who have been here for the previous two sessions will know what a amazing time we've been having so far for this weekend. And with a running sheet here in front of me, I can assure you that there's an amazing night of entertainment and stories and history and predictions for the future, and who knows what else is going to happen. My name's Ian Gibbins, and you're going to be sick of me by tonight, end of the night. But for people who haven't been here for any of the previous sessions, I'll just a couple of minutes introduction of what this event's all about. There's a few misconceptions that we need to rule out of hand. Most importantly is that this is not a retirement party for Marcello. It's not his birthday. And as far as we know, it's not sort of a farewell to this mortal earth either. Traffic conditions notwithstanding. It's great to see everybody here. The previous sessions that we've had have talked about Marcello's explorations of the big wide world. We've had some fantastic stories last night of his adventures through various mountain ranges of the world and all the people who've been with him. We saw a lot about his family and growing up in Italy, in South America and in Australia, and how his family's moved on as well in that time. And it was really marvellous for those of us who've known Marcello for a long time to see the whole story come together in ways like that from so many different perspectives. It was really marvellous. Then this morning, we sort of got, to say more formal would be a serious mistake, but we looked a bit more at Marcello's scientific explorations, and we had a bunch of former colleagues, current colleagues and students and people who've worked with Marcello on and off, sometimes just for a little while, sometimes for a long time, over many years. So we got a fantastic overview of the sort of science that Marcello's been involved with, the sort of science that he's spawned as the people who've worked with Marcello have moved out to develop their own careers in different parts of the world, going back to their own home laboratories, wherever they happen to be around the world. And plus we got a real range of ideas on where the science that we've all been working on is like to be going into the future. And that was a really marvellous session as well. But tonight we've got a different slant, a different group of people, because one of the things Marcello's interested in is not just exploring the physical world, not just exploring the world of science, but it's also the world of society, of art and culture and all the things which link them together. And so tonight we've got a different range of people talking, we've got a different range of stories I'm sure we'll hear, and who knows, we'll end up by the end of the night. Because the running list gets quite vague by about 10 o'clock. So, enough from me. We've got a pretty tight schedule. There's lots of people got various contributions to make to tonight, and plus we have to fit in with the caterers with their marvellous food they've been providing us for the last two sessions. So I'll be popping up here every now and then and telling you to sit down or stand up or drink up or eat up or shut up or something like that. If you'd like drinks between now and this is the message I'm supposed to be giving you, and 7:15, you can get them from the bar. You feel free to go up and get them, but you have to, but you've got to pay for them then. They're not part of the ticket. So I think without any further ado, we'll take advantage of the fact that I haven't got too much to say, and we'll go to our first guest for tonight to speak, and it's Paolo Nocella, who I met only for the first time just a few minutes ago, I'm afraid to say. And when I suggested to him what I was going to say by means of introduction, he looked askance and thought that probably wasn't the best thing to do. So perhaps we'll just introduce him as a prominent member of the local Italian community, and he'll tell us something about his experience with Marcello. Now, as he comes up, the other thing that you'll see me doing from time to time is jumping down there, which is fixing up the electronics from time to time. So it should be all right though. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I didn't realize that I was going to be the first number of the evening, but I do realize that I'm fresher than most of you that have been celebrating for the last 48 hours. I've got a bit of catching up to do. Now, knowing the audience and knowing that it's full of fine scientific minds, I prepared myself for this evening and I embarked on a little research project of my own. And I'm delighted to be able to announce that as a result of my research project, I will be revealing some aspects, certain information about Marcello that is probably not known by most of you and most likely not even by Marcello. So I hope I can attract your attention on that note. And to start with, I need to direct your attention skywards, towards the celestial vault, towards the vault of the heaven, because I need to refer to astrology and astronomy. More astronomy than astrology, but we start with the observation that those interested minds that 2,000 years ago looked at the night sky and identified certain shapes corresponding to certain groups of stars, certain constellations, and named them, as we know, according to shapes known to them. Animals like fish or the bull or the crab, and people like the twins or the young virginal maiden or the water carrier. And for about 2,000 years or a bit more perhaps than that, we have lived with this knowledge that the 12 signs of the zodiac, neatly corresponding to the 12 months of the year, each lasting approximately 30 days, are the symbol of those influences that, according to the astrologers, govern our minds, our behavior, our character, as they reflect and represents the stars that presided over our birth. And as we know, Marcello was born on the 9th of January, and therefore he probably has lived all his life, not so much himself because he is not prone to astrology, I don't think, but many others, his friends and families, have probably referred to him as a Capricorn, and have noticed, realized, and identified all those features that Capricorns carry with them. And yes, it is right. Marcello is a Capricorn. Well, not quite. What has happened in the last 2,000 years is that since those original observations, so that have placed the 12 signs across the path of the sun, the apparent path of the sun god on the chariot charging across the sky. We know that it's not true. It's the earth that moves, but mythologically, that was the belief. And what has happened is that the earth spins with a wobble, like a spinning top. For the scientific minds, it is called precession, not procession, precession. And it causes a shift in the position of the sky, of the stars in relation to the sun. What does that mean? It means that every 26,000 years, the precession cycle is complete, and every 2,000 years, we have a shift of approximately one constellation. And that is, in fact, what has happened. We also know that in this process, another constellation has been revealed, so that we have, astronomically, of course, 13 signs and not just 12. And they're not neatly spaced at 30 days each, but it depends on how large this constellation is, because the sun transversing these groups of stars may take from a minimum of 7 days in some cases, in one case, to a maximum of 38 days. So this is what the astronomers tell us, and if you ever want to check on that, you can go to the planetarium in Salisbury, and you can ask the astronomer in charge, and he or she will show you the night sky and the 13 constellations that now constitute the astronomical celestial vault. So, in effect, I can now announce, without fear of contradiction, that Marcello, born on the 9th of January, known throughout his life as a Capricorn, is in fact a Sagittarius. And why not? It's not a bad sign at all. It's a very nice sign. I used to be one. I'm no longer a Sagittarius. I was born on the 11th of December. I was a Sagittarius all my life until I went to the planetarium. And I realized that now I belong to the 13th sign, the sign of Ophiuchus. I am an Ophiucan. And for those who are shocked, yes, Ophiuchus is a certain sign. It doesn't look like anything. It doesn't resemble any animal or object or person. It's just a mass of stars. And the sun travels through Ophiuchus for 18 days. Consequently, I'm a Sagittarius. I'm an Ophiucan. And since there are about 5% of the population born under the sign of Ophiuchus, chances are there is about half a dozen people here tonight, and to you, Ophiucans, I have only one thing to say. Ophiucans of the world, unite. We have a bright future, but not as bright as Marcello, who from now on will be known as a Sagittarius because of my research. I hope that he conserves the memory of this effort and will allow the influence of those stars that presided over his night on that 9th of January many years ago and made him what he is today. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. We've seen some interesting signs today, and this is right in exactly the same spirit, which is exactly what we want to hear. Now, just while I get the slide ready, next person who's going to talk to us is Linda Cooper. And Linda has been working associated with Marcello in all sorts of interesting ways for several years now, not least of which to do with many of the activities which Marcello's done with public science. And we've had a fantastic experience over the last several years, Marcello and I and others around the place bringing science to the public. And Linda's been absolutely instrumental in making a lot of this stuff happen. So Linda, it's over to you.
No, thank you very much, and I am very honoured to have the opportunity to talk tonight on behalf of a team of us actually that have worked very closely with Marcello over the last 3 or 4 years, since 2004. I first met Marcello as part of Baroness Professor Susan Greenfield's period as Adelaide Thinker-in-Residence back in 2004. Marcello was very instrumental in getting her program into action to be able to deliver a lot of the outcomes that it's been able to deliver in the last 4 years. I really came on board halfway through Susan's period as Thinker-in-Residence, and when I came, Marcello was working extremely close with her in Flinders University, looking at how neuroscience in particular can be brought into the broader public arena. through a number of different projects and initiatives of which Marcello has taken part in, every single one of them. And also at that time, both Susan and Marcello were very instrumental in the setup of SANI, South Australian Neuroscience Institute, which together have combined to really take neuroscience and education, and in particular public education, into an important part of neuroscientists' activities, in making people and giving them an opportunity to understand some of the wonderful knowledge that people like Marcello have. The best sort of thing that excites me about that sort of thing is that Marcello has quite a unique passion and also incredible skill to broaden his knowledge beyond his academic colleagues and arena of which he is most comfortable and perhaps not most comfortable, but most frequently shares that knowledge with. And I'd just like to touch on a number of programs that we've done together and to provide you some of the wonderful flexibility that Marcello demonstrates and the ability that he contributes to these projects. The first, of course, is his endeavours in exploring how education, and in particular education training, can link to a knowledge of neuroscience. In particular, how teachers can learn from understanding how the brain works, and particularly in the developing brain, and how that contributes to learning. And in that, Marcello was extremely influential and to set up the graduate diploma in neuroscience, which has a contribution of neuroscientists from the 3 universities in South Australia, but is largely driven from Flinders. And that's through Marcello and Ian's activity. And we've now had 3, if not 4 years of teachers that have undergone a 1-year graduate diploma, working with scientists, neuroscientists in particular. And I know from talking to the teachers, and Loris is here, who's basically guided that project for that period, will be able to tell you that the experiences the teachers have had in undergoing this course has been fabulous, and their ability to share that with other teachers has been very rich as well. But this particular activity here is with the Lee Warren Dancers, and it was one of the events in Science Outside the Square, which is a public science event series that we've been running. Again, a part of the Susan Greenfield initiatives, where scientists engage with public in different settings where you don't normally sit and listen to public. Probably one of Marcello's favourite venues would probably be the Governor Hindmarsh Hotel. And we do get the opportunity to sit there, and invariably neuroscientists will pack the hall. Usually it's music, but this time, it's scientists talking. So inevitably there's an audience of 300 to 400 people that are lining up and queuing at the doors of it's a rock concert, but they're here to listen and see Marcello. Particularly this one, which was Brain, Music and Dance, was an exploration of the neuroscience of movement. And I think Marcello probably would agree that it was perhaps one of the most interesting collaborations he had was with Lee Warren, which is one of Australia's most contemporary and innovative choreographers. So on behalf of all of us, really, the other things that Marcello's done as well is written for the media, getting neuroscience out into mainstream media corridors such as The Advertiser, which getting a bit of science in there is always a good thing. And again, Marcello's really pushed those boundaries. He's the sort of person that we've found that really, through his wisdom and guidance, is able to really push the barriers and explore what exists between the different disciplines of either art, science, or any creative endeavour. And particularly, he's very interested in how sort of creativity and imagination can show us new insights and new areas to explore that even the general public can even get, not just academics. So on behalf of us that have worked with you, Marcello, and you who know who they are, thank you very much for all your contributions and congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. That was terrific. And it's important to say that Linda's done a lot of work with a lot of other people working with her, including Amanda, who's here somewhere over there. Yeah, big cheer for Amanda as well. As I said, the schedule tonight is pretty tight, but it's also a bit unpredictable. And now we have a special surprise guest, which not even the other organising committee knows about, and which is something which came out of this morning's session, I understand. And I'd like to invite Barbary Clark, I'm not quite sure where she is, to come and give her personalised report on the science that we heard this morning, I believe is the gist of it. Thank you.
Yes, well, this session is called Cultural Explorations, and I hinted last night that there were some cultural differences, and I would just like to reflect some of these back to many of the members of this morning's session. My piece is called Barbari's Revenge. Well, the day's come to an end. I'm a bit stiff, and I need to go and do some axonal stretches. I'm taking my cultured neurons to a Ronnie Tahene concert tonight. She's very photo-stable, but I hope her music has tunability and circadian rhythm. But if not, I've got other options. I can go to that nightclub that's got electrode fluorescence and improve my lumbosacral flexibility if my cytoskeleton can stand it. But you have to be afferent to get in there because they charge so much. I don't plan to imbibe enough polypeptides for it to have neurotrophic side effects. And as far as sensory transduction as far as sensory transduction or sniffing stuff through microtubules, I don't believe in that because they don't do proper chemical coding, and it can lead to higher effects and independent events that cannot be predicted. Once it caused me to have a profound fear of being bitten by rats with mutations. I was in a weak steady state for days after that. Thank heavens it was transient. I love watching the abandoned oscillatory behaviour of the podium dancers. It really depolarises me and I lose all my inhibition watching their physical straining. It's a wonder they don't give themselves a hiatus hernia. Or maybe I'll just go home and watch CNS or listen to my Maestro system. I don't want to get takeaway because proteins don't travel far, and I don't want to damage my pelvic visceral function or my urogenital long-distance continua through mass movements of colonic contents. My flatmates are only parasympathetic to this view and often eat pizza that they've heated up in the macrophage. One of them's a model, but she also sings and she's got a CD deal. She's doing some in vivo recording of neural activity. Strong inward rectification sounds painful to me. Is it the result of a dorsal root? Barbary! Go remodel your hindbrain. Reverse the flow of your cognitive disorders. Ferret around for some motility in your culture. Thaw out your cortical sense. Trigger some competence in your neuroregulator, or we'll have to post hoc label you as feroid.
Absolutely wonderful. If you weren't there this morning, that was really fantastic. If you were there this morning, it was bloody amazing. Okay, so next up, so see, looking at his cheat sheet, we've got some live music. And one of the things which Marcello has been involved with all his life has been music. And he's extremely good at it himself, as we'll see a little bit later. But he also has a wide range of friends and colleagues who are musicians. And I was just talking to someone before, it's really amazing how many people in science, or different areas of science, are musicians in some way. Often amateur, but also pretty good at it. So the first person we've got for tonight is Marcello's long-standing collaborator and current head of department, so he better do a good job, Simon Brooks. So welcome, Simon, and we might just, there might be a few little glitches and bangs and clicks as we turn things on, but we should be right. Let's just take a second now. You just stand in front of the front minute. Yeah, that's right. Once Judy's been. So it's
going to do it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you do that for me?
Yep.
It'll be the last one.
Okay. Simon? Simon?
Let me just try this.
Kill him, Tiger.
Okay, so, well, thanks very much for keeping yourselves entertained. We had a little technical glitch there. Actually, what I was going to do tonight was to mime to some ABBA songs, but I've been told that that's actually not appropriate, and Helen wouldn't lend me any of her frocks. So, when Ian asked me if I would perform tonight, he actually told me that everybody in the audience was going to perform, and I've actually seen the performance list, so I hope you guys have got your pieces ready. So, anyway, when Ian explained it to me, he said, "You'll have a captive audience," and I said, "Ian, the pleasure will be all mine. I'm about to prove that to you." So, what I'd like to start off with is, if I can get through it, a piece for all the migrants. It's called Helen in Four Lands, and there's a chocolate frog for anybody who can spot the March of the Mother-in-Law. Thank you. So the next song is an old English folk song, done with my own particular style. It's a song that I used to sing to my own two boys as lullabies when they were very small. And they're getting over it. Sometimes they can now sleep through the night without waking up screaming. And the therapist says that the drugs are really quite effective these days. This one's especially for Marcello, because I know how much he loves his grandchildren. But Marcello, if they really annoy you, I'll lend you the words to this song. So enjoy. Dance to your daddy, my little laddie. Dance to your daddy, my little man. You shall have a fish and you shall have a fin. You shall have a cuddling when the boat comes in. You shall have a haddock baked in a pan. Dance to your daddy, my little man. Dance to your daddy, my little lady. Dance to your daddy when the boat comes in. When you are a man and come to take a wife, you should wait a lesson, love her all your life. She should be your lesson, you should be her man. Dance to your daddy, my little man. So we've had culture, we've had music, we've had science. It's about time that we had a morality tale. And this is an old song written in the 1920s, made famous by a southern blues singer called Bessie Smith. And I've changed just one line in it to make it peculiarly relevant to tonight. I've got a technical. Live my life like a millionaire. I spent all my money, never had no cares. I took all my friends out, had a mighty fine time. I bought that old demon liquor, champagne and wine. Then I got to falling so low. I spent all my money, I had no place to go. I get my hands back on that dollar again. I'm gonna hold on to it like a long lost friend, 'cause nobody knows you when you're down and out. In your pocket you ain't got one penny, and as for friends, well, you don't have many. Nobody knows you when your grants run out. In your pocket you ain't got one penny, and as for friends, well, you ain't got any. Thank you. So this last piece, special song that I wrote many, many years ago. But when I was practicing it, some obscure Australian band actually heard me practicing it and they ripped it off and changed the words. Recorded it as their own song. Tonight I'd like to give you the original, which is called Marcello Down Under. Now, this is an audience participation thing, so I want to hear you joining in the choruses. They're the red bits. And Ian is going to introduce it line by line as I work through the verses, and then you can join in the choruses. Just don't get too excited, just wait your turn. Working in a laboratory, many, many years, lots of fame and glory, lots of good ideas, from small to big. He's clever but not as clever as the guinea pig. Will you find him in a land down under, or in Patagonia, I wonder? In Italy or Argentina, or windsurfing round the Glen Elg Marina. He played guitar, soft sound that lingers, like Django Reinhardt with few extra fingers. He likes his chips with strong black coffee. Never eat no fruit, that's his philosophy. Will you find him in a land down under, or in Patagonia, I wonder? Or Italy, or Argentina, or windsurfing round the Glen Elg Marina. Now that wasn't bad, but you could do better. So, if I have to stop, We're all going to be sorry about that. So I want to hear you on the next chorus, right? He's the man from Sarnie. Talks very, very fast, got Italian blarney. Got guts in mind, give a 3-hour lecture. This man don't talk out his splenic flexure. Will you find him in a land down under? Or in Patagonia, I wonder. In Italy or Argentina, or windsurfing round the Glenelg Marina. And again, will you find him in a land down under? Or in Patagonia, we wonder. In Italy or Argentina, or windsurfing round the Glenelg Marina. Thank you very much.
Told you he was good. That's fantastic.
That neuroscience going on my right here.
I did. We'll come into another day. All right, so the music continues, and we'll just move the microphones around. And now we've got, for tonight, Ronnie Tahini, who's a resident of Seacliff, just not too far from Marcello, who gave us a couple of fantastic songs last night, and she's got another little collection for us tonight. And some of you have been to her shows at the Gov over recent years. Is really fantastic. Whoops, that's right.
Sorry.
And just talk amongst yourselves for a minute and want to get yourself organised, because I don't need to say anything else while that's going on.
Grazie. That one's for me. Cheers. I would just, while we're waiting for something to happen here, while I get my arse together, I would like, on behalf of the musicians, and I'm not sure for the people who've been out there for the last day and a half, you wouldn't be aware that Ian Gibbins is wearing about, well, maybe you are, sorry, I'm being a bit presumptuous, but you may be not aware that poor old Ian is wearing about 16 hats at the best of times, and he's sitting back here controlling all of the stage sound and the sound for you as well. So I'd like to thank Ian so much for being a fantastic person to work with. Yes, and if I'm not singing in tune, it's his fault. Right. Yeah? Okay. Thank you, Simon. We were talking earlier about, when he was sound checking, we were talking earlier about the fact he hasn't played for 1,000 years. But not a little known fact was that Simon was an absolute raving pop star in Exeter before he got too famous and gave it all away because he was a bit sort of shy for that kind of stuff. But it's very obvious you've not lost it. So you're a bit of a hard act to follow. I won't bother trying to compete at all. I'm just going to do a couple of my songs and that's it. This particular one, which is on one of my CDs, I got the great chance to live in Ireland between 1995 and 2000. And during that time in Ireland, there was a couple of controversies going on. I was in Galway on the west coast, but it didn't matter where you were in Southern Ireland, it was going on, you couldn't get away from it. The first one was divorce, the issue of divorce. We're talking 1995. That was still getting, anyone who was lobbying for divorce was still getting plastic crucifixes and bombs in their post boxes, and the other one was contraception. And they solved the divorce one while I was there, but the contraception one still was raging pretty well. In fact, when I moved to Germany, 2000, there was still in Ireland, 14 Irish girls every day were having to take the ferry boat to London to get a legal abortion. 14 girls every day, amazing. And I think it's dropping though. But the last time I was in Ireland, in Galway, I finally did espy a condom machine. And bizarrely, it was stuck on the front of a nunnery in Galway. see beyond these shores of stone crosses and walls. Misfits, mercenaries, and missionaries, the sacred set their sights while yonder land calls. So we'll sail away to start again, never look behind, never look behind. Will ye find a stained and tarnished name? Well, one of them was mine. The secret's mine. Doctors waive the fees for remedies, and angels kneel in wait as naked folk passing by. What ungodly shame our lives have been, the very faith that hems us in still wonders why. So we'll sail away to start again, never look behind, never look behind. Will ye find a stained and tarnished name? Well, one of them was mine. In some other place and time. So we'll sail away, a week to stay, standing there in line. Could they read our mind? When we find ourselves unmarried girls, then prayer is not so kind, and blind's leading blind. Rearrange a buried page, or slowly lose our mind in our world left behind. Cheers. Have I depressed you all to the nth? Now, people say, well, what exactly do you do? And I've got no clue. I've been doing it 25 years and I've got no clue. And I think it's one of those things, unlike science, if you do analyse it, you'll probably make yourself madder than you already are. So I'll just... Excuse me. To my tech tonight, Ian Gibbins. See, he's wearing another hat again. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ian. Yeah, so I just tell stories and talk shite, really. That's what I do for a living. And people in Europe seem to accept it. Sorry about this guitar. It was in... I haven't had a winter for about 20. I've had 20 summers in a row. I haven't had a winter for 10 years. That's the only reason I became a touring musician, because I hate winter. But this guitar doesn't like it either. It's my excuse. What's the old joke? The 12-string guitar players, they spend a quarter of their time playing and 3/4 of their time tuning. That'll do. Just after 2011, I got the good chance to go down to some of the Middle Eastern states. And the reason I went there deliberately is because I wanted to do the next album as a bit of a political thing with the whole, the geopolitics at the time of just after 2011, September 11th, 2011. And there's some states I couldn't get into. So meanwhile, I was waiting on the coast just out of Damascus in Syria, you know, waiting to be given a visa, which never really happened to a couple of other states I wanted to go, for research purposes. You know, I was down there in this beautiful Mediterranean place for songwriting purposes as well. You know, there you are, shacked up, staying on the esplanade, where the rest of the world is going through winters or colder weather. There you are on the southern side of the Mediterranean, 28 degrees every day, the best food in the world, the best people, you know, some of the best people in the world, right in this gorgeous sea. The surf wasn't too bad at that part of the Mediterranean. And, you know, you're supposed to be there for songwriting purposes. As if, you know, as if you'd ever sit down with a pen and paper. How boring. But after 3 weeks, I was starting to get concerned because I hadn't written a thing. That all changed one morning when 6 American surf boys moved in across the hall. Yeah, they were fantastic. They were brown. They'd been 18 months on the road going through all these different Muslim countries, and they'd ended up where I was, and they were incredibly brown, incredibly beautiful with their beach blonde hair, and they're a bit like Graham here and a few others, and this incredible six-pack here as well, and they were just unbelievable. And each morning they'd go off and they'd go off every morning with their surfboards on the top, and they'd come home at the end of the day and I'd say, "Hi guys, how did it go? How was the surf? Was it great? How were you boys? How was it?" Boys, my boys. Every day I was calling them my boys, and they in turn called me Mum. And this went on for days, and, you know, away they'd go, and one less surfboard on the top each day, and then they came back, and how's it going? And, oh, yeah, it's okay. Totally depressed. I couldn't believe it. I thought, something's wrong here. Third day, off they went in the morning, back they come. How'd it go, guys? How's the surfing? Oh, yes, all right, okay. Something's up here. What's with these guys? We're all, you know, most people here are Australian. Most of the people I know here live on the sea. If you've been surfing all day, you might be tired, you might be stoned, but you're not going to be depressed. And these guys were. Something very odd was happening. I found out on the 4th morning when I was woken up by the hotel was full of police looking for these 6 American surf boys who had done the midnight flick and basically had been frog marched out of that particular country for what they were actually up to. So I didn't find out too much about the lads, but at least I got my first song. It goes a bit, I think, like this. I've got to say myself, I'm just the same as someone else. I'm just the same as you, only better. I'm gonna use your voice, I'm gonna help you make your choice. And when you make some noise, we better make it soon. Could I be taken for a ride? Could there be more than just one side? How would I know it's right in another world, in another world? I'm gonna use your voice, I'm gonna help you make your choice. And when we make some noise, we better make it soon. So you're not red or white or blue, tell me what has got into you. How would you know it's right in another world, in another world? As we go riding on Jesus lead us on? What will we learn along the way? We know we're right and wrong. We'll sing the same old song. We are the truth, the life, the way. Or so we say. I've gotta save myself. I'm just same as someone else. I'm just same as you. Only I'm better. Could I be taken for a ride? Could there be more than just one side? How would I know it's right in another world, in another world? So you're not red or white or blue. Tell me what has got into you. How would you know it's right in another world, in another world? As we go riding on, that's Jesus leading strong. What will we learn along the way? We know we're right and wrong. We'll sing the same old song. We are the truth, the life, the way. That's Jesus. That's Jesus. Riding all the way. Or so we say. I've gotta save myself. I'm just same as someone else. I'm just same as you. Only I'm better. I've gotta save myself. I'm just someone. Only I'm better. Grazie. Thanks, Marcello. Thanks, David. Cheers, folks. Great night. Cheers.
Well, fantastic. Thanks, Ronnie. That was, and Simon too, for our first fantastic lot of live music for tonight. So now we'll come back to have a couple more little talks and hear a bit more about Marcello's adventures in the social and cultural arena. And first up, we've got Janice Lally, who's from the Flinders University Art Gallery. I'll just find her slide while she comes up. And we've got, here we go. We go there. You just hit the space bar. Thanks. What's that?
Right, thank you. Well, I feel really very privileged to be invited to be part of this event over this weekend, and I thank Marcello and Daniela and also Judy and Ian who've been so wonderful in organising it all. It's quite exciting to have this opportunity to say a few words publicly about the most recent experiences I've had with Marcello and his unquenchable enthusiasm and generosity of spirit in relation to art and science and their connection with the big picture. Following my earlier encounter with Marcello and some of the others who were here tonight and spoke this morning, when I worked and studied clinical biochemistry at Flinders University in the School of Medicine in the time around 1975 or so, in the lab of Philip Barter, I returned again to work at the university as a program manager and curator at the Flinders University Art Museum in 2005. I changed from being a molecular biologist to being, by that time, an art historian working with contemporary art and so on. During 2007, I encountered Marcello through his Science Outside the Square activities that Linda made mention of earlier, and also when we participated in the development and planning for an Arts in Health event with the body in mind that Sally Francis, who's here, was involved with. In the same year, I produced and presented an exhibition titled Identity, Portrait in Place, Document or Insight. This was to be held in July, September in 2007 at the Flinders University City Gallery. For this exhibition, I took identity as an issue that was highly contested, a notion that at the individual and cultural levels is constantly being informed, reshaped, reaffirmed, created or projected in various ways. And I invited prominent South Australian artists Christopher Orchard, Anne Newmarch, Di Barrett, Darren Sewers, Michael Klavanik and Anna Platten to review and select works from the Flinders University Art Museum collection that interested them, that provoked new perspectives for their own practice and could be a stimulus for the development of new work that addressed that thematic question: identity, portrait in place, document or insight. While the artists would, of course, be producing the work to be exhibited, I sought a fresh input to their framing of their approach to their work from 3 scientists who, in their own research and practices, were also interested in dealing with issues of identity in its creative development and its perception. And the scientists themselves had already signalled their lateral thinking in relation to this theme through their close involvement in development of the Art and Health project that was a successful event called With the Body in Mind that was at the Medical Centre in August 2007. So I invited these scientists to join the artists for discussions at the campus museum as they all examined the artworks that I myself had taken out of our own collection of over 5,000 works, and I only chose about 70 that were portraits or landscape or so on. And I invited Marcello, who at that time was Professor of Neurophysiology in the Department of Human Physiology, Ian Gibbins, Professor and Head of Anatomy and Histology, both of the School of Medicine, and also Professor David Bentoven of Flinders Medical Centre, whose own work as a psychiatrist had been focused on eating disorders and perceptions of the body. Issues about the role of perception, manner of representation, and neurophysiological processes, both physical and conceptual, at play in the portrayal of the figure and in the development of portraits were explored in the conversations with the artists and with the scientists together. It was a very stimulating meeting. And it resulted in this exhibition at the City Gallery. When we looked at the prints that we had out, Marcello related particularly to this one, and in fact asked me to give him a copy so that he could use it for his own teaching. It's a 17th century image by Jacob Ruisdael, The Cottage on the Hill. And if you keep looking at it, eventually you'd make out the tree, the cottage, and several other factors that in the first instance you really can't make out. Marcello subsequently kindly opened the exhibition of the new artworks together with the works from our collection which were exhibited alongside the new works. This is work by Michael Klavanik, and you've got the image of Hogarth on the left, titled The Lecture, which was a very appropriate one given Flinders University. And his image that he took he made a collage of from people from the Wheatsheaf Hotel. Now I went back and I invited each of the artists to give me some of their particular thoughts on this experience to share with you tonight. And Michael, who you can see focuses on the identities that he deals with locally, was very delighted to tell me what he felt. He said he found Marcello's interests very varied and wide, and he enjoyed the fact that they shared a mutual friend who's interested in sailing. And he found that his own interest in the local and the particular was appreciated by Marcello. He also particularly appreciated the stimulating conversation that he had with Marcello and Daniela at the meal that we shared following the event. This is the work from our collection that stimulated the work we see here by Di Barrett, whose issues with identity was to do with feminism and spirituality. And she produced two very large photo images, Crucifixion 1 and 2. And she was delighted to respond and say that she found Marcello's excitement with ideas stimulating and inspirational. In her conversations with him about visual experiences, she found he could quickly put into words something that enhanced her own visual experience, providing additional layers that made ideas irresistible to her and grasped her complete attention. She says that Marcello has a talent for listening to what you say and complementing your ideas in a way that clearly indicates his attentiveness to your views, and the way he talks about other people's work that makes it interesting to you as well was also very attractive to her. His approach is inclusive and he genuinely provides an invitation to a two-way experience. Anne Newmarch, another artist of the group, produced Cultural Pattern and Human Fragility 1, 2 and 3. If you look at these are collages of textiles along with images of anatomy. She also said that she was honoured to have met such a fascinating personality. Her conversation with Marcello was a genuine two-way conversation in which art and science were equals, and she felt confirmed in her particular approach to her work that she showed in this exhibition. Chris Orchard was another artist in this exhibition, and he took as his touchstone this little image by Callot and continued on to produce a series of his own charcoal drawings. He found Marcello genuinely inquisitive about the relationship between art and science, how acts of interpretation and attribution of meaning function as a continuous loop. Chris enjoyed Marcello's generosity of spirit and his sense of largesse that he found very European, but also which was very, very universal, and which can encompass big ideas, including the philosophical foundations of knowledge. Anna Platten responded to another image, which she then produced these multiple large charcoal drawings from, found the whole presentation of Marcello inspiring, and found it made her reflect on the nature of physical representations in a different light. This was her touchstone. Marcello kindly then agreed to open the exhibition, and we had over 200 people come to the opening event, and they were very attentive to his speech. You can see him standing in front of the work by Darren Sewers, the other artist in the exhibition, Golden Boy, Silver Boy and Bronze Boy. A common thread from the artists' experiences was Marcello's genuine interest in their work and their thinking, and his capacity to expand and heighten their own experiences in the visual domain while introducing philosophical ideas. So I'd like to say in closing that I too thank Marcello for his passion and generosity of spirit in making this an especially memorable and stimulating project for many people, and I feel honoured to have been part of this celebratory event. Thank you.
Terrific, thanks Janice. Well, that was fantastic to hear a bunch of people from a completely different domain recognising Marcello's contributions and inspiration and leadership. We heard from the scientists this morning, and now in another domain altogether, his influence extends even further. Someone else he's had a long-standing friendship with and increasingly we've been working together with is Teresa Crea. And she's going to come up next and tell us a few things of... Thank you, Teresa.
Thanks, Ian, and thank you also to Judy and Daniela for the opportunity to talk and say a few words this evening. Earlier today, I came along to hear the morning sessions, and then, just as now, I found an incredible warmth in the room and a lot of humour, and I find that's a real testament to Marcello's own spirit and the kind of friends and community that he's gathered around him through the years. Apart from, obviously, our paths crossing quite a fair bit in the Italian community, Marcello entered our lives through Daniela Costa, who was also a staunch supporter and an important member of the board of management of an arts organisation that I was involved with for many, many years, known for its cross-cultural practice. And over time, I think without even realising it, Marcello came to be a friend, a fellow traveller, and a thoughtful commentator to the work that we were doing in the arts. Firstly, because of the cultural connection, but now more recently, and quite excitingly for me, because of the art science research project that has slowly evolved between us. The seeds of this project were sown when Marcello invited me to participate in the art science, Science Outside the Square project that Linda alluded to earlier. And it was there also that I met Ian Gibbins. And I guess that from that time, we have been involved in a continual dialogue and are now involved in a research project looking at some of the observations that came from that project. I guess serendipity sort of was there, and serendipity has led to the fact that now we are looking at the relationship together. We're looking at the relationship of digital technology with the arts, in particular narrative, and how this correlates to the understanding of what happens in the brain. Marcello, as was said and mentioned this morning, is a formidable intellect with a ferocious power for questioning. And in our conversations, when we tried to come together in the sort of arts science dialogue, whether we understood each other or really captured each other's perspective, or whether we agreed with each other, you always came away realising that he had seeded some fundamental question that was absolutely pressing, and you had to go on and find out what it all meant. And that was truly, truly inspiring. He has an insatiable curiosity and a deep love for all aspects of the arts. I mean, what other neuroscientist can you give a comic book to? And he answers you with an email, and I quote, "I'm enjoying the comic book, and I promise to write some parallel comments on the neuroscience behind the many issues that are raised." That is Marcello for you. And it's a little taste of the kind of dialogue that I have been enjoying. I feel very privileged to have this dialogue, both with Marcello and Ian, I must say. Something really exciting is going on right now, and it was alluded to by Linda, this breakdown of boundaries between the various disciplines, and in particular, a breakdown of the boundaries between art and science. Because art and science are a mirror to each other. They are the yin and the yang for each other. And although we speak very, very different languages, in the end, I think we are both on a quest to capture and describe what makes us human. I have no doubts that Marcello's continued questioning of the arts will be as passionate and as significant as it has been in his questioning of science. Thank you.
Fantastic, Teresa. That's really wonderful. There's a little silence hiatus now as the rest of the coordinator committee coordinates. But what we're going to see now is something that I myself haven't seen. that Judy is organising is to show us a DVD of something interesting.
Okay, I've been called to help Ian and Judy, which doesn't happen very often. They don't need any of my help, but this is a pleasure that Marcello Tonini, as you know, was supposed to come. Marcello Tonini is a very dear friend, colleague from Pavia, a pharmacologist and a well-rounded person, as many Italians are, a humanist, and believe it or not, a good neuroscientist philosopher. So you see, he's not the only one that migrated to Australia. But we spent a lot of time together. He visited us at Flinders 3 or 4 times in the late 80s, early 90s. And he has been quite sick for about 3 times. In fact, we thought we would lose him. In fact, he is not here because he was sick. But I must say that from this interview, you can see that he's well alive and is sending his greetings and expressing what he would have probably said here personally. And I hope I have cut the bits that he said in a proper way without misinterpreting him. He's a wonderful person, so if he's ready, you can try and see whether it works. Move that out of that.
Each of his seminars, of his talks, left something exciting for all of us. So thanks to Marcello as a scientist, thanks to Marcello for his ability, as Aldo will say, of opening the mind from science to...
Now, this may very well be one of those gremlins in my computer. Judy put the correct one and shows the same thing that you saw last night. Let's try whether the one for last night plays the one today.
No, that was when we played last night.
Are you sure this is?
Yes, if possible.
You want to try just in case?
Yeah. Now we've lost the disc now. I can't get it out.
Oh, you can... No, just cancel. And it's there, up there. Oh, it was there.
Not there.
It was there, second enough. Okay.
We played this last night.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah.
Well,
do you have your computer here?
I have my computer here.
Well.
But I can transfer the little line. You know, I think I have it. I checked. I'm not sure what I did. I'm not sure.
No.
Well, I may have probably the
Same one, yeah.
Sorry. Do you want to ask?
Continue.
You ask Mario whether he's ready to speak now, and we'll
Can you go now?
see, this is the same
No, just a moment. It could maybe.
interview Italia, but this is
Oh
Torino.
yes, it's the same. No, it's the same.
But I had the title covered. But it's the wrong.
I don't know what happened then. Okay, my apologies. Look like I had made a mishap, so we will not see Marcello Tonini. If we are lucky, a bit later I may be able to extract some of his comments. Otherwise, we may go on with the program.
Yeah. Why don't you try and play that on your computer and see if it's somewhere else on the disc, okay?
Okay, so we may get to see that bit later on. So we'll just move ahead in the program. There's no shortage of things to keep you entertained. So it's a real pleasure now to welcome up Mario Pigazzini, who's visiting us from Italy, from Lecco. And his title up there tells us pretty much what's going on. Psychoanalysis and neurosciences need a non-linear dynamic to understand each other, which sounds a pretty good place to start. So welcome, Mario.
Thanks. Before to start, I would like to say a couple of things. The first, you have to be patient with my English, because one time a German colleague, say me, Mario, your English sounds very German. And so I wrote to Judy, say, please prepare my presentation on the screen. So we'll be patient, because an Italian psychoanalyst speaking in German, in English like the German, it's not easy to understand. But another thing is I would like to ask to Marcello, why you invite me here? Only one psychoanalyst in the middle of a lot of neuroscientists. What happened this morning? A doctor say, if your neuron doesn't work well, freeze the neuron and the neuron get well. So the next step will be probably, if your brain doesn't work well, instead of go to the psychoanalyst or the psychology, buy the freezer and put your brain in the freezer. But it's not enough. After the doctor speak about some problem on eating disorder, and if you have some problem, don't go to the psychoanalyst, go to the doctor. He put a cup of electrode inside your body, and you will lose weight. So don't go to the psychoanalyst. Another doctor, if you have a pain in the stomach, go to the doctor. You relax your stomach. And to finish, a professor from Tasmania say, if you get mad, don't worry, there is a structural plasticity of neuroscience. So, what I do as a psychoanalyst, tomorrow, instead to go back to Italy, I go to sick leave and go to fishing. No one will come to listen to the psychoanalyst. Okay, now, I will start to read my presentation, and please follow. The title is quite provocative. Marcello knows about this because we have discussed a lot about this, but frequently we don't agree. So, let me first of all thank Daniela, Judy, and Gian for this invitation, but above all, Professor Marcello Costa for this kind friendship, his unique support, his punctual critique and stimulus on my research, which, as if to like, I will offer some scientific basis to psychoanalytic understanding and therapy as a natural process. From this moment, I will refer to Professor Costa only with the first Italian name, Marcello, which sounds more personal and better describe his way for getting in touch with people. But let me now recount the adventure which brought me, an Italian psychoanalyst, and Marcello, an Australian neuroscientist, to cross paths. When the model for my research, based on the Sierpinski-Gaskell model, which I elaborated at the Center for Complexity and Nonlinear Dynamics, directed by Professor Casati at Como University, was ready, I made 1 year pilot study with 10 patients to test the coherence and correspondence for model to the intention of the research. We, that is the mathematician and I, obtained a lot of data and diagrams, which required time to elaborate. I decided to take a sabbatical year, and Professor Giulio Casati introduced me during an international congress in the beautiful scenario of Villa Monastero in Valenna on the Lake of Como to the Professor Paul Davies. At that time, it was in 1999, Professor Davies was the chairman of the physics in Adelaide. Some days later, I received an email from Marcello. We had the same interest to go deep inside our specific field of knowledge using nonlinear theories. Even if psychoanalysis is still in its prehistory as a scientific method, Marcello helped me moving a lot the innovative pathways of science. During my sabbatical year in Adelaide, we spent a lot of time discussing sciences, psychoanalysis, philosophy of science, and of course neuroscience. But above all, he was always alert in stimulating my scientific attitude. It was a very difficult task. If you think that an analyst is a person who every day works with metaphor, fantasies, interpretation, mental construction, words and their meaning, that is very, very far from any empirical measurement. But now, this morning, when I see John presented a lot of beautiful diagrams, I would like to also present my diagram. Unfortunately, I didn't bring now, but now I am able to show some beautiful diagram like John presented this morning. So something is going to change. Thanks to Marcello. Even if the recent book of Norman Doidge, The Brain That Changed Itself, offers us some suggestion about the capability of the psychoanalytic treatment to alter neuronal organization, it is a common experience and solid conviction for any analyst that some structural change occur inside the brain of our patient during the psychoanalytic treatment. Conviction is not science, of course, but this is a good motivation, there's pure interest and desire to search for new methodologies. Unfortunately, many analysts are skeptical and refuse any kind of approach to empirical research. Eric Kandel got a new impulse to neuroscience to make a step toward psychoanalysis and vice versa, but I believe that neurosciences are not the scientific proof of psychoanalytic theories. They can confirm some psychoanalytic intuition or the clinical validity of the analytic treatment, as the new emerging science of neuroplasticity seems to indicate. But they cannot be the scientific shadow of a new method for a project for scientific psychology, as was Freud's intention at the beginning of his career. At the end of his career, in 1937, he wrote that psychology too is a natural science. And this is what I would like to do, to transform psychoanalysis in a kind of natural science. Nonlinear dynamic and the complex adaptive system theories are, as I read in Maynard Smith's paper and in Marcello's experience, the way by which biological sciences, and so also psychoanalysis, can find a real methodology for a new scientific project. Marcello not only helped me to understand and assimilate the importance of methodology from psychoanalysis, he also helped me in my everyday jobs and my cultural interest. Marcello, from 2000 until now, came many times to my town, Lecco, a nice place on the Lake of Como, speaking on different occasions, in different places, and to a different audience, on some aspect of the relationship between neuroscience and psychiatry. At that time, I was working as a psychotherapist in the outpatient unit of the psychiatric department, or improving the cultural aspect of locus group with a great success. We have two groups. One is called the Banquet of Sciences, Convivio delle Scienze, and it was composed by different experts in different fields. And another is called Psyche Reality, is a group of psychotherapists and young psychologists that will grow up in their experience. The last time that Marcello came was exceptional. With a band directed by my friend, Marcello organized and managed from Adelaide a superb event on neuroscience and music. Tutti insieme appassionatamente, that means all together and passionately. Every piece of music was a clear demonstration of a specific aspect of the brain functioning that Marcello was illustrating with the use of PowerPoint. Before to stop, I have a secret to tell you. Nobody knows. I hope. Andrea, do you know the secret? No. Marcello, you know that Marcello has a secret daughter? No. No one? No. Marcello has a secret daughter. Why? When I back Italy, my first daughter stayed here to finish high school, and she was living near to Marcello. Every day she went to Marcello's house, speaking with Marcello and Daniela. And when she back to Italy, started say, Marcello say, Marcello say, Marcello say. Okay, so I saw my daughter, Marta, what happens? Oh, but Marcello was my second father. So now I bring you the tale from my daughter about how you helped her. So you have another daughter now. Anyway, Marcello, I bring with me the gratitude of many friends you have conquered in Lecco with your deep knowledge, your clear communication, your affability, your spontaneity, and the real open mind. Please come again to Lecco. Bentornato, Marcello.
Thank you very much, Mario. That was really wonderful. All scientists are citizens of the world. We work and live in a world culture, but Marcello is especially a citizen of an even broader world than most of us. And he's always heading off somewhere. And especially in recent years, it's always been a bit uncertain where he's actually gone and who he's actually been meeting with and exactly which domain of intellectual and cultural activity he's been working with. So it's been really fantastic, Mario, to have someone from this other part of Marcello's world that we don't usually get to see directly, to come here and share the experience. So thank you very much. It was really wonderful. So now, technology has prevailed, at least Judy's version of it, and Marcello's version of it, which is even better, perhaps a bit even more surprising. And we now actually do have Marcello Tonini's video to look at.
It was the same one we were looking at before. It was just disguised.
It was disguised, sorry.
Each of his seminars, of his talks, left something exciting for all of us. So thanks to Marcello as a scientist, thanks to Marcello for his ability, as Aldo will say, of opening the mind from science to all other human intellectual experiences.
The attitude to explore, to go in deep into the details and not to remain at the surface, even if it is just moving from intestinal control and the enteric system to complex systems and theories, to complexity and music, to complexity and art, but always with a fresh approach where is looking to the reality with child eyes, but at the same time with all the background of a good scientist able to navigate everywhere on the web. Thank you, Marcello.
Hello to all my friends in Australia. I'm happy today because Marcello and Daniela are here in Pavia. We already have a good lunch, and and this is important for me because I have a particular transfer for Marcello Costa and also for Daniela, not only from a scientific point of view. I came from the first time in Australia in 1998, and then again in 1992, 93 and 95. This is the root, scientific route, investigating the intestinal reflexes and peristalsis, but this is only science. An important piece of science, but only science. Marcello Costa is much more than science, because with Marcello Costa it's important to have every day an intellectual fighting. And I think we are two Marcellos and two fighters. And so this is very, very important. So not only to stay in the lab, but also to stay at home, in their splendid home in Sikif, looking at almost a boat in the sea. And I remember how many discussions about life, not only science, not only the fact that we are Italians, we all remember a lot of many things, and Marcello in Torino, I in Pavia, and discussing about kids, about sons, about the future of our sons. Different. For me, for Stefano, my son, and for Andrea, who is in Melbourne now. So I believe this is very important for me because this is a piece of my life that I cannot forget. because this is, at least for me, is a moment of intellectual growth. Also from a philosophical point of view, because at least there is a part of my life that is rather crude, and you know the reason. But sometimes I remember and look at Australia, look at Marcello and Daniela and the labs in Australia. It's for me a joy to remember a sort of this part of my life. And I believe that this was not important only for me, but also for my wife, for my son that came with me in 2 occasions. They joined me in Australia in 2 occasions, because there are no lost minutes with Marcello. You cannot forget minutes, time or time. So there are important. Every moment is important because the life is important. And Marcello is a person that lives his life every minute of the day, of the week, of the year.
To see Marcello Tonini in virtual world, from the other side of the world, which is very, very wonderful. Okay, next up, we've got a fairly scary thing. Most of today, this morning, was talking about experiments in science and stuff and that. And now coming up, we've got an experiment in culture, I suppose, for want of a better word. Last night, I played a couple of tunes where I'd taken little samples of Marcello's music and modified them in various ways, for better or for worse. Tonight, we're going to try, and I had some pre-recorded pieces of Marcello. Tonight, we're going to have a go at doing 2 pieces where Marcello will play first, and then we'll morph into my version of it, and then we might combine for a little coda, if we get it right. Now, you should warn this, that we appreciate you've paid to come tonight, but you paid for the dinner, and you've paid for this wonderful support here. You didn't pay for the music, at least not this bit. So I'll just take us a couple of minutes to get set up, and then I'll just say briefly what these things are. Now, Michelle's got the words here. Can you just find those? Sorry, you said here somewhere? You need this one for the guitar. And this one for the voice. I'm not quite sure this way if
Marcello, that one first. First one.
Testing as a good concert. Yep, everybody test. How's the doing, Ian? Yep.
Okay, we're going to try just do this cold, basically. There's some words we can't help that. Now, the reason I'll just say briefly, just why why I chose these two tunes, and Marcello gave me a CD with a dozen or so tunes on them, and I picked some out and thought these are interesting bits of music. But these two that we're going to do now are just really amazing pieces of music. I've heard Marcello sing them before. The first one, I had no idea I don't know what the words are about, but it just had this fantastic feel. And Marcello explained to me what it was about, which is up here, about sweet to die at the sea. And I thought, well, how about that, given the amount of time we spend in the ocean? Sweet to die in the sea, well, maybe. If you're going to do it, that's not a bad place. So what we'll do first is this one, and the next one's a much more rousing sort of piece, which Marcello might explain to you what it's actually all about, because I don't know.
Well, great, Ian. This is a bit of an adventure, an exploration. Let me say that I can easily blame not just Ian, but also Ronnie. Ronnie convinced me about a year ago, more than half a year ago, says, well, why don't you play with me next time? I said, well, that's fine, it's good. And she was serious. And you must know that she makes a living out of her art. She makes a living in Europe, particularly in Germany, and only gives one concert a year in Adelaide. And so I realized that I was in the program opening, if you like, the evening for Ronnie. And I can tell you, I've never been as scared as that. Now, tonight I'm a bit less scared because you're in the audience instead of just playing. But it's still a bit unnerving. But I feel that Ian is going to fill in for all my faults. This music I played in the concert, and this music that comes from South America. One is Brazilian and one is from northern Argentina, where I spent many years, and one is in Brazilian and the other is in Spanish. So we'll give it a go first to E doce morrer no mar. É doce morrer no mar, nas ondas verdes do mar. É doce morrer no mar, nas ondas verdes do mar. A noite que ele meu beijo foi de tristeza pra mim. Saber eu voltou sozinho, triste noite foi pra mim. É doce morrer no mar, nas ondas verdes do mar. É doce morrer no mar, nas ondas verdes do mar. Saverio partiu de noite foi, a madrugada não voltou. O marinheiro bonito, sereia do mar levou. É doce morrer no mar, nas ondas verdes do mar. É doce morrer no mar, nas ondas verdes do mar. Nas ondas verdes do mar, meu bem, ele se foi afogar. Fez sua cama de noivo no colo do Iemanjá. É doce morrer no mar, nas ondas verdes do mar. É doce morrer no mar, nas ondas verdes do mar.
ondas verdes do mar, doces morrem no ar, nas ondas verdes do mar, nas ondas verdes do mar, meu bem, nas ondas ele se foi a voar, doces nas ondas verdes sem manjar, doces morrem no ar, nas ondas verdes do mar.
É doce morrer no mar, nas ondas verdes do mar. É doce morrer no mar, nas ondas verdes do mar. Nas ondas verdes do mar, é doce morrer no mar, nas ondas verdes do mar. Now we move to Argentina, northern Argentina. My brother remember, he's been there many times. High mountains, little Indians living in the high plains of the Andes, where unless you take coca, from where Coca-Cola comes from, you won't survive. Every one of us going there feel a bit sick for a while, but they're still very happy, very simple, very happy. Jujuy is the northern region of Argentina. And so this is a little dance, they call it, because people dance, and it's wonderful to see them dancing at about 4,000 meters high.
I just should say, before we go, that the sample I've used for this is in some really weird time. So if you feel like taking along to find it, please help us. Sorry.
Viva mi amada, vivan los sesos pintarrajeados de mi quebrada, vivan los sesos pintarrajeados de mi quebrada, no te me pequeña, no te separes de mis amores, tú eres mi dueña, no te separes de mis amores, tú eres mi dueña, la 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 la, no te separes de mis amores, tú eres mi dueña. Viva Jujuy y la hermosura de las jujeñas, vivan las trenzas bien negritas de mi morena, vivan las trenzas bien negritas de mi morena, Conchita linda, no te separes de mi vida, tú eres mi vida. No te separes de mis amores, tú eres mi vida. La 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 no te separes de mis amores, tú eres mi vida. Viva Jujuy, viva la pura, viva mi amada, vivan los sesos pintarrajeados de mi quebrada, vivan los sesos pintarrajeados de mi quebrada, mamá pequeña, no te separes de mis amores, tú eres mi dueña. La 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 la. No te separes de mis amores, que eres mi dueña. No te separes de mis amores, que eres mi dueña.
Time for breaks. Okay, there's drinks, you need some for now. Then there's entrees served in a little while. It's time to sit and talk and stuff for a while. And it's around about 8:30, there'll be more stuff to listen to. Okay, Marcello Festers. We've got some more things to go on with now. Whoops. So now we've got a really special person to come and talk to us. This night's not about me, but this guy's important to me too, as well as to Marcello, because John Chalmers, who we're going to come up and hear speak now, was an extremely influential person in the School of Medicine Foundation Professor of Medicine at Flinders. But more than that, he was a absolutely dynamic character and helped shape much of the character of Flinders that it is now, and indeed our own individual characters as well. Could we just turn the CD off, please? Let's heard that music before somewhere. Thank you. You don't want to hear it again. So the important thing is John Chalmers was actually appointed me as head of department, which was a risky manoeuvre at the best of times. Now John's extremely good at attempting risky manoeuvres and pulling them off with some degree of aplomb, despite occasional glitches that people like me. But anyway, he and Marcello have worked together, have been friends together for a long time. It's going to be a real pleasure to hear John come up and talk to us for a bit.
Thanks very much, Ian. Marcello, Daniela, ladies and gentlemen, it's fantastic to be here and to be asked to speak at Marcello's special fest, for he is surely one of Flinders' great heroes, and there have been many, but he's one of the greatest. I well remember my first encounter with Marcello and the Melbourne mob, the Burnstock mob. It was sometime in 1974. Phase 1 of Flinders was nearing completion. The staff of the School of Medicine was still in the flats. Those of you who know what I'm talking about, those flats up the hill there. The project planning team was still in the hut. And Alex and I were on one of our regular trips to Adelaide, to Flinders, during the period between my appointment in 1974 and coming permanently to take up my post in 1975. And either Laurie or Gus arranged for the young Melbourne mob to take us through phase 1, which became Building A, or the medical school end of the building, because it was built in 4 separate phases, and phase 1 was going to take the sort of academic medical school end. And so Marcello, John Finesse and Brent Gannon were asked by Laurie August to take us on a hard hat walk through the new building, which was about a month or two off being commissioned, through the emerging castle, wearing those yellow hard hats. I don't know if you remember the hard hats we used to wear when going through the new buildings. And so I began to become aware of this Melbourne mob, maybe the Melbourne push you could call it, edging out the Oxford push. Geffen and Frankel and Berry and Rogers had all come from Oxford. Suddenly these Melbourne bastards came. And preceding the Sydney push, even worse bastards. But it was the beginning of one of Flinders' great achievements, the building of a neuroscience mob, the Geffen vision, if you like. And it's so sad that Laurie couldn't be here, Laurie and Hina. They were such a big part of building neuroscience. The vision, the idea of it came from Laurie, and it's such a huge part of the success of Flinders. Anyhow, this neuroscience mob led in time to the intermediate thing, the neurobiology seminars, which were there for 2 or 3 years and bound us together, then the full Centre for Neuroscience. Laurie, Marcello and John Finesse, Bren, Bob Brush, Charles Strasnicki, sadly no longer with us, Andy less so, and then people like Bill Blessing, John Willoughby, Ian Chubb, and in time Ian Gibbins, Judy Morris, Simon Brooks, and then people like Jane Minson, Eda Llewellyn-Smith, Paul Plosky, a huge array of people building this jewel in the crown of Flinders. And in my mind, the Centre for Neuroscience, or the CNS as we called it, was at the heart of Flinders' success. As a medical school, as a major force in medical research in Australia, as a leading centre for neuroscience, for second ever, but more important, as a very leading centre in neuroscience on the world stage, as the premier institution in research in Adelaide for so many years. And it was interesting, it put paid to that early derisory view that the Adelaide establishment had, that Flinders would be the school for general practitioners, while the Adelaide got on and did the proper work and the proper science and research and trained the proper doctors. It wasn't that much of a joke, because Flinders almost played into their hands. I found out shortly after I was appointed that there were no plans to have a cardiac catheter laboratory, nor a respiratory function lab, nor an endoscopy service, nor neurology, EEG and nerve conduction lab. Seemed to be expected in those early days that the clinical academics could do their research walking through the wards and the outpatients. We would have been training barefoot doctors with nothing but a stethoscope and a warm heart. And that was my first real battle at Flinders. It took years of poor old Gus Frankel's life by the time we got those facilities. But anyhow, coming back to neuroscience, in so many ways, the Costa Finesse Lab of the 70s, and then going on into the 80s, was the engine room for Flinders' success in neuroscience. It had a huge impact on my own work, huge impact on that of my group, huge impact on Bill Blessing, you've heard that, as a neuroscientist, his whole development. It added a whole dimension to our work and that of so many people, integrating structure and function in a way which was right at the cutting edge of science. Helped our lab to reach world class, helped so many others at Flinders to come up into world class. Did the same for so many groups. And Marcello and John were just so incredibly generous with their time, their expertise, their willingness to collaborate, even with the Philistines from the clinical end of the enterprise, such as ourselves. Some of you might remember, but there was deep suspicion at the basic end of the laboratory about those strange clinical bastards at the other end. But Marcello and John set the tone in those early years for a truly collaborative framework where the idea and the expertise transcended across those silos of departments and disciplines. It was one of the great features of the Centre for Neuroscience, but it bound us together from all corners of the enterprise. Scientists, physiologists, anatomists, we'd lost that distinction between physiology and anatomy. It sort of didn't matter. Even Michael Berry at one stage tried to make a combined thing with everybody in the basic science, including the biochemists, and called it biology. Marcello himself was such a big part of that and led the way by example for the whole of his working life. Neuroscience was one, and as you know, he's gone ahead to do it across the whole town, not just at Flinders, with SANI, the South Australian Neurological Institute. Can you imagine trying to do that across the town of South Australia? You'd have to be a mad mountaineer to pick up that challenge. But there's so many other dimensions to Marcello and to Marcello's life. An amazing life. What we've heard these last day or two is just so illuminating. And even though you know about it, it's wonderful to hear it come out. You know, the Italian Alps, Buenos Aires, Brazilian jungles, South Australian waters, intertwining of science and exploration. So those two facets of exactly the same spirit, that spirit of discovery, which is sort of so deep in Marcello, climbing mountains one day and scaling scientific heights the next day. That blend of body and soul, brain and brawn, physical and intellectual, scientific and spiritual. I mean, it's all there in Marcello. Of course, as we've heard, he's quite a sportsman, and we've heard about his windsurfing and seen the passion and commitment to windsurfing. And during the last 2 days, the mountaineering of the most challenging sort, not just ordinary little hills, but huge mountains in South America, in Europe. One sport that some of you may not know about, and I think it's real. I remember Marcello having neck surgery about 25 or 30 years ago, and I went to see him in the ward. What's all this about, Marcello? What's happening? why have you got such a bad neck? And Marcello said he thought it was because he'd played too much football and heading the ball had given him a really bad neck. So he's a pretty good football and soccer player as well as all those other things. Marcello, a family man with a deep commitment to Daniela and Andreas and to his mother-in-law, Daniela's mother, who spent 6 months with them every year for so many years. That wonderful extended Italian family. It was natural. Marcello, the architect, building that wonderful building at Seacliff, a wonderful house, so original and imaginative, like his science, and the wonderful hospitality that Daniela and Marcello gave to so many people in this room on that lovely terrace looking out to sea with a little sail up above it from time to time. It was just fantastic for so many of us. Marcello, with engagement for society as large as we've heard, the theme of tonight, that amazing range and interest that he has. And Marcello, the warm Italian-Australian man, with that marvellous Italian warmth, that Italian capacity to express and communicate emotion, not just communicate ideas. In all facets of his life, in fact, he's a passionate and committed man, deeply passionate about all his causes, committed to all of them, his family, his science, his music, and wonderful to hear his music tonight. His mountains, his institutions, his community. Let me just say, Marcello, in closing, two things. First, one of the enduring pleasures and satisfactions from my days at Flinders is undoubtedly my friendship with you, my engagement with you, my learning from you in science, my joy in you as a wonderful, warm and civilized man, because you are such a civilized and civilizing influence amongst us all, as a friend and colleague, and in you and Daniela as wonderful people, a marvellous couple. And second, for me, Marcello, you will always epitomise for me all that is best about Flinders and about neuroscience at Flinders. For neuroscience at Flinders has clearly been at the core of Flinders' success in research and as an academic institution. And you, in turn, represent the essence and the core of all that is good about neuroscience here at Flinders. The brilliance and excellence of the science, the commitment to the highest standards, and that special feature that you bring that so few others have added, in the fullness with which you have, that caring and thoughtful human face which you've added to science of the highest quality. So let me say, Marcello, for me you represent what T.S. Eliot termed the still point in the turning world. As he said, at the still point is the dance, and except for the still point, there would be no dance. And for me, you have been both the still point and the dance of science here at Flinders.
Not yet. I don't know. Well, thank you very much, John. It's a really wonderful overview from someone who really knows how things work. So it's a really important thing. Okay, so now you got me again for a few minutes. And when I was sort of, Marcello said, in talking, I said, I've already talked this morning about science and stuff. We've done some music and things. And I saw us at sort of just about the last person, especially coming after John Chalmers. And I thought John's going to say everything that probably needs to be said, and that's true. So I'm usually not too short of word, but I must admit on this occasion, I don't have a real lot to say, which is probably a good thing given the time of the night. And when I was putting together, I think, well, what's sort of some of the key things about Marcello, and especially sort of in the context of tonight, about the broader activities of Marcello. I thought, well, let's just sort of make a series of dot points which cover some of the things that Marcello's done and is still doing, continuing to do, bringing neuroscience and engaging with the rest of the world. So some of these things, as I suspected would happen, people have already commented on tonight, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. And we'll see how we go. So we've talked a lot about windsurfing and stuff, and everybody's showing their favourite pictures. Well, this is an early picture that Judy took of me somewhere up on New South Wales coast. So Marcello taught me to windsurf, which I'm eternally grateful because I used to surf a lot. When I came to Adelaide, the surfing was so crappy I didn't know what I was going to do. And Marcello and Bill and all the other people down at Seacliff were getting going themselves, and so I originally borrowed a board from Marcello, a strange Italian import that he had, and learned how to do it. But I always wanted to go back into the surf, into the waves, and as people around the lab know, if the conditions are good, I'm out of there. Life's too short. Now, if you do something like this, as Marcello himself has said, and Bill said the other day too, you really have to engage it with what you're doing. You can't afford to make a mistake too much. Now, what I'm going to just give you a few examples of is the way in which Marcello has engaged with the broader community in all sorts of different ways. And I suppose what I'm talking about amongst other people is that certainly for the last several years, I've been part of that process. I'm not sure how it all evolved. I'm not sure either of us can figure out exactly where it all started. But we've been on this fantastic, exciting adventure of probably about 5 years now, I suppose. We've been... Marcello drove all this, it's really important, but so putting the bait up there, saying, we really ought to be going out and doing this. There's more to it than just the lab stuff. There's all these things out there that people should know about, and we can tell them. And what I'm going to go through now is just some of the examples of the way in which Marcello's done that. So here's a good example. These couple of pictures, this is something we've already referred to. It's from what Linda and Teresa talked about earlier. And this is from, this is the first Science Outside the Square event we did at the Governor Hindmarsh Hotel a couple of years ago now, that I was with Marcello. Marcello had already done a show at the at Footy Park, as I recall, or the soccer stadium, about the brain and football or something like that. I don't think it was proper football, it was a round ball sort or something. Anyway, so here we'd done something. Then we got involved with this and with Teresa, who you've already heard speak. But this particular grouping of people is really fantastic because it summarises art, philosophy, education and politics. Because on the top picture up on the right there, that's Baroness Professor Susan Greenfield, who came out to Adelaide as an Adelaide Think in residence as part of the scheme sponsored by the state government. And the really amazing thing was that a group of us around town, led by Marcello, had sort of realised that there's a whole bunch of things that we could do that would be interesting and would probably get people interested in science and engaged. We didn't actually, at least I certainly didn't, have any idea on how to actually go about doing that. And we didn't quite sure what the audience liked, what you could do, where you get the money from and everything else. And Susan Greenfield came and said, we had a whole string of meetings, you do this, and I'll get the Premier to pay for it, and it all happened. And as part of that process, Marcello, it's almost impossible to overestimate the importance of Marcello there as being a finely guiding influence through all the thousands of things which could have happened to the things which actually did happen. And people know Marcello, he's always got all these different interests, all these different ways of doing things. But during this process of the last 5 years, I've seen a part of him which I really haven't seen before. Maybe he didn't have it before, I don't know. Maybe someone else knows. But it's a finely tuned political sense of what's appropriate for the moment in terms of dealing with government, in dealing with government agencies, in dealing with the universities, hierarchy, in dealing with the people in all the different institutions. And that was absolutely a critical part of getting all these activities together. The other things there is philosophy. The bloke on the right, there in the bottom picture, is Gerard O'Brien. He's a philosopher. He calls himself a neurophilosopher these days, which is really good. And part of Marcello's interest in philosophy, we'll know about that, he's been interested in it forever. And talk about it in a moment's notice. But part of this exercise was engaging these people, the people that he was already talking with, people that he knew around town, into this public engagement exercise, bringing them into it and being part of it as equal partners. Not saying we're the neuroscientists and you guys are philosophers, you can fill in the gaps or some other thing like that, but it's bringing them as equal partners and sussing out who are the people who could actually go up to and talk at the Gov and engage people and have a good time. People come out and listen to philosophy on a Friday night. And this night, they actually paid for it. They had to pay $10 or $12 to come in that night, and they did, which was even more amazing. And the other thing which came out of all of this was through education. And we mean education in a whole range of different ways. So there's the public education. People like to know how things work. And one of the things we've become absolutely amazed by, which Marcello always knew, is that if you start talking about this stuff to anybody, if you give them a bit of a clue and nice environment, it's interesting. And people are really amazed at what we do as scientists in general, neuroscience in particular. You can actually record from a single nerve cell. You can actually see connection in the brain. Oh, bloody mighty, eh? And by getting that sort of stuff out into the public was really fantastic. Marcello and Judy and I originally ran a WA course about 12 years ago or something as a precursor to some of that stuff. We sort of got a bit of a feel for it. And I already mentioned politics. And then what was Marcello's masterstroke, and it was a huge amount of work. People talked about this. But the behind-the-scenes work was fantastic. And in a way, Marcello is probably the only person around with the vision, the wherewithal, and the right position in his career, I think, to pulling to get the South Australian Neuroscience Institute, which many people have mentioned already. This is a collaboration between all of the neuroscience, anybody wants to call himself a neuroscience, essentially, if it's a professional in South Australia. And at the time, it was unique. We sort of realised, well, apart from making the body of neuroscientists and people interested in neuroscience in South Australia a nice big critical mass, which can hold its head against the masses over on the East Coast, there's more to it than that. Marcello realised that by getting all these people together, people like Jared O'Brien, people like some of our colleagues now in University of South Australia, other people throughout Flinders that we didn't actually necessarily have that much to do with, that if we got all together, we actually had this huge mass of expertise. And if people wanted to know something about how the brain worked, someone in Sani ought to know the answer. If they didn't, they'd know why there isn't an answer. And leading out into that, Marcello helped with working through the state government, and people like Linda and Amanda, who we've heard before, was involved in a whole range of initiatives which came out of the Susan Greenfield Think in Residence program. And just some of them are here. There's the Science Outside the Square programs. They transformed into a thing called the Bragg Initiative, named after the famous Braggs, which was a whole range of programs to bring science to the community in different ways, sometimes through the schools, sometimes through the teachers, sometimes through students, sometimes through the media, sometimes through public events such as the things at the Governor Hindmarsh. And lots of people involved in that process, but certainly for a lot of this stuff, the neuroscience in a way became the flag bearer. And why? It was because Marcello went to every meeting and was always prepared, and he always had a bunch of people who could back up and actually stand up and actually do something, as opposed to what other people just thought about it. And Marcello is really important in getting everybody mobilised for doing that. Now, that part of that's informing the world, but the other thing too is this notion that John sort of referred to at the end there, of social inclusion. The way Marcello works is that everybody should be in until proven otherwise. And if they don't do stuff, well, bad luck. And if they're blasted, well, bad luck. But generally, everybody's in. And one of the things which people probably don't know too much about, I suspect, is that Marcello's been working with Monsignor Capo as part of the social inclusion unit and working with some of those schemes. And that's been a really critical way of providing input out of our community directly into government policy in a way which matters. Not many people can do that. And this other thing too. Marcello's a very ethical person. And it's easy to see that by looking down CVs and stuff like that, because he's chaired until very recently the Animal Ethics Committee at Flinders for 20-something years or something. To start, the number might be quite right. That's a procedural thing, it's an administrative sort of thing, but it's very, very important. But it goes beyond that, and I think some of the most important interactions I've had personally with Marcello over the years has been arguing about not the philosophy of knowledge or quantum mechanics applied to consciousness, or whether or not there's this nerve or that nerve connects to that other thing, but it's about the ethics of situations. And I think I'm an ethical person, but I quite often don't have a good idea of what the ethical position should be. And Marcello will certainly tell you in no uncertain manner, but it's important, and people don't do it very often. And people don't very often actually argue out the ethics of a particular decision or a particular policy. Or if you do this, then these are going to be the consequences. And they might matter if you believe this, or if you don't believe that, then maybe they don't matter, something else. So ethics is important, and I think one of Marcello's lasting contributions, a very, very subtle one that perhaps people don't even realise to how things work at Flinders, is acting ethically, being honest, being true to yourself, being true to your data, being true to your colleagues. And that's really important. But sometimes it can get a bit much, and we think of Marcello as being an absolute bundle of energy and sort of boundless enthusiasm for all the things that he does. And it's true most of the time, but it's not always. And over the years, I've seen Marcello completely buggered, for want of a better phrase, and exhausted emotionally, exhausted close to it intellectually. I don't think it's ever intellectually, but certainly that there are times when it's been hard for him, and people don't always notice that, and they don't always appreciate it, I think. So it doesn't come naturally all the time, and that's an important thing for us all to realise. Now, just start to move into slightly different territory. That's all a bit serious and heavy and stuff, but we've been talking about this discovery business, and what the thing's called, title's called for tonight, but it's all about discovery and new worlds and things like that. And we heard yesterday these fantastic stories of Marcello and Giorgio's adventures through the Amazon, or through South America and the Amazon and stuff, and discovery of new worlds. That was an absolute adventure. There's no doubt about that. And I just love hearing about it. Every time I hear it again, it's always some new nuance that I think, wow, that's fantastic. But we're actually talking about another Amazon here. This is the virtual Amazon. Amazon.com. Books. And something else which I share is just too many books. And accounts on Amazon which must drive our account managers completely mad. I know it does mine. And Amazon has this, I know people buy stuff on Amazon, but it has this fantastic device. It's the most wicked marketing device of all time. We notice you have bought a book by so-and-so and so-and-so. Other people had bought this book and found it interesting. You might be interested in this one, so on and so forth. It's turned out on many occasions that other person has been him. And we go in, hey Marcello, I got this fantastic new book. Yeah, so did I, but did you see this one? Yes. And we go down this parallel sort of buying strategy. But I have to say that Amazon's changed my life. I actually didn't know about it. Marcello told me about it. And I would have found out sooner or later anyway, but my stock of books would have been a lot smaller if I hadn't have come across Marcello. So this is an important thing. The world of books, the world of knowledge, the world of literature, of history, of knowledge that's embedded within the books, within literature. And we read lots of things the same these days, but we also read lots of things different. And so there's always something to talk about, the latest book that we've got. And embedded in that is something else which, if you know Marcello, you almost take it for granted. And in some respects, it's part of the European heritage that other people have talked about. But Marcello is always reminding us of aspects of history which are important, and how we got to where we are and where we are now in some aspect of culture, of society, of art, of science. Is important to him, and he's convinced me and many other people that's worth going back into history. I was never interested in history. I hated it at school. I could never remember the dates. It was boring and all the rest of it. But when I started doing science, there were actually 3 people who got me interested in history again. First of all was Graham Campbell, whoever he is over there, with insatiable knowledge of how people actually got these ideas. Where did it come from? What was the original experiment? Don't read what someone else said about someone else saying about something. Let's go back to the originals. And so we dig papers in German or Italian or French or something and go back and try and read the original papers. And Graham got us started on that back when I first done PhD. But then we came to Adelaide. Marcello and John Finesse also had the same approach that you've got to know your history before you can move forward. And James Vickers commented on that really beautifully this morning with his histology. So history is important, and Marcello carries a lot of this in his head, and he's very generous in giving that information out. And John just finished up before, John Chalmers just finished up talking about Marcello's passion. And it's another important thing. And there have been times when Marcello's sometimes gently, sometimes a bit more forcibly, chided me, and I'm sure other people as well, for not getting involved enough, for backing off from a situation, from saying, well, you really got to stand up and decide what you're going to do. It's, if you like, it's the action side of ethics in some way. But it's not divided, it's all part of the same deal when it comes to Marcello. So the passion is important, and I think what Marcello demonstrates to us all is that sometimes people use it as a derogatory sort of thing, you know, oh, he's a passionate sort of bastard, yeah, too emotional. Well, no, seems a pretty good way to be. So I think many of us have learnt a lot from how to use passion in a constructive way. Now, that's almost the last thing I was going to do because time's up. But as some of you know, I've been writing stuff a fair bit lately, which is not to do with science, and I thought, oh, there must be a poem or something I can finish up with, and I was going to write one, and I sort of did the music instead. But there's one that's been hanging around, which I've used a few times, and we'll just see how Charles is there. Right, okay. So, we've got, over the last couple of years, I got interested in poetry and writing again, and trying to sort of, not consciously, but bring together the aspects of culture and language, and also the way in which we think, the way in which language is used to convey things that you can't put into words. Seems a paradox. And this notion of passion is one of these things. It's too subtle to put into words, really. And the notion, and how emotions work, and how you describe them, how you interact with people, how you describe the sorts of things which we've been talking about all the whole night and all day about how Marcello interacts with various people. We've been trying to put a thing. What is it that makes Marcello Marcello? There's lots and lots of words, lots of pictures, but still very, very hard to define, even though we all know. And one of the things I was interested in a while ago is how embedded in our modern day-to-day language, the day-to-day language that we use all the time, there's this history that we've been talking about. And it's a history which completely infiltrates the way in which we think and the way in which we speak. And this is a poem which I've read before, and it's been read a few other places too. And it's based on just day-to-day phrases. And it's about the heart. And these pictures here, these are two, they look like a couple of strawberries or maybe a couple of love hearts. They're real nerve cells in the heart of a real cane toad, believe it or not. But that's what they are anyway. So here's a little thing about language and passion and emotion. And I think it applies to this whole experience that we've been having here. Light-hearted. Light-hearted. heavy-hearted, soft-hearted, broken-hearted, heartache. Open-hearted, cold-hearted, empty-hearted, kind-hearted, heart of gold. Goodness of your heart, the bottom of my heart, heartfelt, heartless, change of heart. Lion-hearted, stout-hearted, heart like an ox, your heart's desire, learnt by heart. Hale and hearty, his hearty laugh, her hearty broth, heartburn, your heart on your sleeve. Downhearted, faint-hearted, bleeding heart, heartened to hear, the heart of the matter. Sweetheart, this heartland, this heart of the country, this heartbeat, this heart to heart. So, thank you, Marcello, for... So basically, thank you, Marcello, for being Marcello. And now, we have something really amazing to do. And I'd like to hand over to Sally Francis, and I'd like Marcello to come up, please. Come up to the front. Well, just stand there. Stand there, Marcello. Stay there. Yeah.
Hang on, I'll bring it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Come on.
And I'll hold this.
Yeah, you're the props person.
Yeah, I'm the props person.
Yeah. Now you're allowed to come up, Marcello. Hi, I'm Sally Francis. I'm the Arts Coordinator at Flinders Medical Centre on the Arts in Health programme. I first met Marcello, or started working with Marcello a couple of years ago with the Body and Mind event, which has been referenced a few times throughout the evening. It was an event at the Medical Centre that was a joint sort of a collaboration between Flinders Medical Centre, Flinders University and Science Outside the Square. And I first had this idea of having this sort of art and science event. My first port of call was Ian and Marcello, both who are incredibly enthusiastic about this idea and came completely committed to the project. And it really wouldn't have happened in certainly the same form it did without Marcello's input. So it was a one-day event. There were 3 presentations. There were 27 presenters, a mixture of artists and scientists, and it was a true collaboration. Each session, the artists worked with the presenters, the scientists, to address various issues around the body. Marcello's session was called Art as a Window to the Brain. And within this session, there were 2 artists, Jungle Phillips and Rebecca Cambrell, who painted live on stage either side of Marcello speaking, and there was a panel of people presenting as well, or answering questions. So Rebecca Cambrell is an artist that's had quite a long association with the Medical Centre. She had an exhibition last year called The Painting Project, dressed in a wedding dress to live, and she paints to live music. She has a form of synesthesia. And Marcello got to know Rebecca through With the Body and Mind, and he played while she was painting in the gallery at the hospital, and Marcello's played a few times in the hospital with his true generosity of spirit and wonderful music. So Rebecca actually photographed Marcello playing as she was, during the time she was painting, and during With the Body and Mind in the presentation, she did a portrait of Marcello based on these photographs, and the portrait was done in an hour, I also just have to mention that Marcello played again a couple of months ago. Rebecca had another exhibition this year, and he played again, and Rebecca, she's very cheeky, she actually got Marcello's guitar case and propped it in front of him in the corridor in the gallery, and there must have been, 70 people at the opening, and she hand wrote this note saying, "Poor starving neuroscientist," and pegged it on the guitar case. And while the speeches were happening, Rebecca started throwing money in, and so other people did too. It was a great money spinner for arts in health. So, Marcello, I have to say, it's never too late to change your profession. You've got a good... So, Rebecca, unfortunately, can't be here tonight and has asked me to do this, which is present the portrait of Marcello to him. And she said to remember it was done in an hour with a little bit of touch-up afterwards. So, Marcello, I thank you also from Arts in Health for all your support of the programme.
Thank you so much. That's a nice applause.
And Marcello hasn't seen this, so...
All right, so we're going to put that somewhere safe now.
Maybe
Put it down there,
put it
yeah?
down there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
No.
All right, so that's really fantastic. That was an absolute surprise. And if you're interested in Rebecca's work, it's quite often in a FMC. She does all sorts of stuff down there. All right, so we've got another break now for some food, which will be really nice. Because it's smelling fantastic coming out from the kitchen. And we'll be back in a little while. Hello again, everybody. It's time to have some more good things happening. And we've had a pretty mighty fine range of things happen over the last few days. It's coming to an end. We could do this every weekend and it'd be fantastic, especially in a place like this. There's all these friends everywhere, it'd be great. But now, it's an absolute pleasure, real pleasure, to introduce we get the real inside story into Marcello, because now we have Daniela. Okay, so just press the space bar. I'll just sit down here in case something goes wrong.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Ian. Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us for these 2 fantastic days. And I want to, a special thanks for Ian and Judy, who have brilliantly masterminded these events. So I just want to do it now. Now, I'm kind of blown away by the richness and the intensity, the depth of the presentations and the testimonies and contributions for the past 2 days. And so many people who have given such a rich tapestry of Marcello's involvement in so many fields of knowledge. I knew about it, but I mean, to hear it like this is just absolutely magnificent, so I thank you very much. I would also like to thank people who have come from as far as Argentina, Canada, Europe, and the United States to be here tonight. I also want to thank Ronnie, because Ronnie gave me a glimpse of what humor is in a public speech. So I want to thank. I would like to begin by talking about Marcello and science from what could be called our parallel universes in both our lives and careers. And through my own observation, I've been struck by Marcello's unabated curiosity, by his often bold quest to unify many areas of science and knowledge, by his drive for questioning and probing, and his generous and genuine desire to share his thoughts and views with colleagues and friends. Now, to make sure that this does not sound too eulogistic, I'm going to read a message that was sent by Carlo Maggi, a highly active scientist from Florence and a very long-time friend of Marcello. Carlo wants to pay a tribute to Marcello with an anecdote that, in his view, captures Marcello's qualities as a person and as a scientist. And this is a sort of translation and summary of what Carlo wrote. Back in 1993, Marcello spent a few months in Carlo's lab, where he brought an enormous impetus to life there through his range of knowledge and his keenness to interact with everybody. The lab had a soccer team called the research team, which had been competing with other teams from areas that were not involved in science. And the research team had won the prize the year before. And naturally, there was a build-up of tension to defend this title. Carlo took upon himself, but unfortunately, there were a number of people who had moved on to other jobs. And Carlo was tense, and so he decided to become the coach of the team. And he thought that Marcello would make a great goalkeeper. It was then important to convince and charge up this team, and in a true Florentinian spirit, he thought of a practical joke that goes something like this. As everybody knew that Marcello was originally from Turin, he convinced the team that Marcello was a favorite pupil. In fact, he was groomed to become a reserve goalkeeper by Bacigalupo, a legendary goalkeeper of the Italian soccer team called Torino, the most glorious of them all in the 40s. The truth is that in 1949, all members of the Torino team perished in an aircraft crash. But Marcello was spared, as he did not travel on that day because he was ill with the flu. That was the story of Carlo. Marcello, distraught by the accident, he decided to abandon soccer altogether and throw himself into science. During soccer practices, Marcello displayed such talent and style, and he was able to convince everybody of his true origins, so much so that a rumor was starting to spread, claiming that Marcello was in fact the illegitimate child of Bacigalupo. The research team won again, also thanks to Marcello's winning goal save right on the final whistle. And Carlo's conclusion is that research requires humility, tenacity, and inventiveness, and that Marcello has got them all. In the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to take you for a tour of my 38 years of life with Marcello, years that have been full of intellectual and emotional challenges, of adventures, of discovery of different places and meeting a diverse group of people, many of whom are here tonight. And looking back, it feels as if indeed there was not 1 minute lost ever in our life, and that point has already been made before. I first met Marcello in Lerici, a fisherman village on the Italian coast, where I used to spend my summer holidays. Marcello arrived one day on his Vespa, armed with a guitar, and he was heading somewhere down south in Italy. So we spent a few days cruising on the Gulf of Lerici on my auntie's humble dinghy, and Marcello soon grabbed our attention with the account of his adventures and of his expeditions in South America and Patagonia. And when he left, I was somewhat blown away by the encounter with such an intrepid character. And it was a science that opened the way for me to catch up with Marcello again later on. I was a junior medical student, and Marcello was already doing his final years and was occupying higher floors in the research lab of the Department of Anatomy at the University of Turin. I was soon inspired to climb high mountains, and it was only last week that I discovered that there must have been some chemistry between us, because apparently Marcello used to pack heavy rocks into his former girlfriend's rucksacks to train their strength, but he spared me. So it must have been through love, or probably is the reason why the other girls did not hang around. So we adventured ourselves everywhere in this Fiat 500, on beaches and even through unsealed, cliff-edged mountain roads, and I felt as if I was starting to absorb some of Marcello's daring spirit. Not so long after, I broke my leg. As I was skiing on a glacier during summer, and Marcello came to my rescue to take me to the hospital, and as I was coming out of the operating theater, he proposed. After a short separation, which was caused by the Italian army, we got married in Turin, and soon after, we took off eagerly to start our big Australian adventure. So we left Italy in the turmoil of the 70s, and we jumped into the Melbourne campus, which in those days seemed to me inhabited by the most unusual and interesting characters. I could soon witness Marcello's excitement for sciences. He was carrying on until late hours doing experiments, as I was struggling to learn English, mostly to deflect Graham Campbell's threats to pinch my bottom. Now, simultaneously, Graham was speaking Italian from me, and he made his connections that Marcello in Italian must have meant help. So we got started with our married life, not overly touched by the post-hippie era of the 70s. And there were already a few warning signs of Marcello's tendency to build his literary empire, but there's more of that later. It was time for us to learn new skills and get involved in projects such as do-it-yourself project, to rejoice outdoor life, meeting new friends, and above all, to discover Australia. And Marcello was still hanging on to his valiance, and I continue to be amazed by his eagerness to seize opportunities, every opportunities to seize new adventures and experience new things. And indeed, the years that followed were full of adventurous and unique time spent with dear friends, and joining them into new physical challenges. And I discovered through Marcello new fields of music, as we heard tonight, all his rich talent. I cannot say the same about dancing, because I think that this is maybe a territory for us to explore in our old age. And there were memorable days spent with family. So when Andrea joined our life, we reveled in the sweetness of parenthood, and Marcello's zest to inspire continued to sparkle, and we both shared the joy of watching Andrea growing as a talented, wise, independent person and a loving husband and father. Marcello's enthusiasm for teaching skill did certainly not dwindle with our grandchildren or for sharing his passions and making sure that they also could grasp basic skills in communication. But we both grabbed all opportunities to have fun with them. So what does the future hold? Well, I'm sure, as we learned these evenings and last night, is going to be full of surprises, and that Marcello's intellectual endeavors will follow new paths, and he will continue to stretch his boundaries. As for myself, Marcello has enriched my life and has been a constant source of inspiration and encouragement for me to take on new challenges in my life and also in the work and career. And naturally, we've had testing times, but I'm sure that if I'm ever stranded on a desert island, Marcello will continue to be an exciting companion and a generous and great friend to be stuck with. Thank you, Marcello.
Well, thank you. That was absolutely fantastic, Daniela. And have another break while we have some more food, and then we'll have the big finale. Thank you. Okay, everybody. That worked. Thank you. So now we come to the sort of grand finale of the MarcelFest, and it's the MarcelFester himself. Sorry, it didn't sound right, did it? It's Marcello. And we've had a fantastic couple of days of all sorts of wonderful things, and Marcello has already spoken a few times at various aspects of what's going on. But just before I do, I'm going to leave Marcello the last word. But before I hand over to him, just a couple of things. Lots of people have said it already, but thank you especially to Judy for getting so much of the organisation done. But also, and Daniela and Marcello have contributed all this in all sorts of subtle, interesting ways as well. Gathering together all you people over 2 days, over 3 sessions, was a fantastic exercise in sort of, I don't know what, social engineering stands too hard a word for it, but who's out there? Now, that was a question Judy and I sort of had. Who's out there that these guys know is part of the world? And let's try and get as many as possible together. So, and Marcello, and of course you guys wouldn't be here if it weren't for each of them. So that's a really important part as well. A couple of other things to thank as well is Shane over here, who's videoing the whole thing, and we've worked with him previously, and we know he does a great job, and we'll look forward to seeing the outputs of this. He's also quietly solved a few technical problems which would have made things much worse if they hadn't worked. And finally, I'd like to thank the venue people too, because it's a great place. Daniela had been here before and said this is a really good place. Everybody's saying, where are Daniela? And they've been great to work with, and they've looked after us really well, and the food's been terrific, and there's a really nice environment. So thank you all the venue people too. And finally, the most important thank you is for all you guys. We had no idea if anybody was actually going to turn up. It's like, you put on a show and nobody turns up. Now, in fact, some of you had to book and pay and stuff, we had some idea. But even so, the fact that so many of you have come from so far away, from all around the world, from all parts of Australia, which is just about as expensive as coming from the other side of the world sometimes, finding the time, finding the interest to come here and meet up with Marcello and Daniela and Andrea and everybody else who's in this environment here. It's been really good because, and certainly for Judy and me too, I mean, most of you we know too, and everybody knows about 80% of the people here. And that's really great. And the other 20%, it's been fantastic meeting you. What a great opportunity. So on that note, you ready? So now it's, I didn't know what this is called. There you go. Last word to Marcello.
Okay, well, good guys. Now, what a night, what days. In fact, I drank a little bit tonight, so in fact I may not wish to be so concerned about what I'm going to say. In fact, I could say a lot, and I will say a lot, but in a way, a lot has been said. And if I could only encapsulate a little bit of what has been said these days, I would have achieved what I dream of my life to achieve, which is a sense of unity. And I know for sure, this part of the 17 hours of videoing, that all this will not disappear, but will return to be the diversity that all of you are, and that inside me possibly I am too. So the dream of bringing things together has driven me all my life. So this is it. This is as close as I ever get to get things together, to make sense. To make sense in a way that often my good friend Bill teases me, saying, well, that's the worst aspect of you, Marcello, wanting to make sense of everything. And he's probably right, but I cannot not attempt. Now, you may wonder why I'm trying to do this and why, therefore, you are here. Now, you are not a figure in my imagination, but perhaps you are. At least you are there, you're real people, I know. But the way in which I look at you and I interact with you is something which is so unique and so personal that I only know that bit of you that is reflected on me. And I know that you are, for other people, different people. So that's the very difficult aspect to deal with. And I'd like to think for a moment, in these 3 days, many of you have used me as a mirror of yourself, and perhaps you saw each other as well. Because that's the way I feel. If I ever search for this sense of self, a sense of unity, this is the closer I ever get, and certainly it's very satisfying. Now, why on earth people want to do that? Well, some people want to do that more than others. I have a good excuse. I told you that the stories about the motivation of this is to explore and to share the adventures in 3 continents, in 3 aspects of life: the geographical exploration, the scientific exploration, and the cultural exploration. There are other explorations too, more personal, very hard to share in full, but I think we did to some degree in the last 2 days. So when you have 3 things, it's like a table. Now you think it may stand up very steady, but actually it's difficult to navigate and to be content that when you are in one world, whether it's in a continent, in a culture, in a language, because these 3 continents I lived are 3 languages, it's hard. It's hard but possible. My best mentor, my brother, is a good example of it. He speaks 6 or 7 languages, but actually at home, and this is true, they do speak 3 languages every single moment when they speak to each other, which is a lot. If you think I do speak, just go and visit the Costas in Buenos Aires. The daughter speaks Italian with the father, with Giorgio. The daughter speaks Spanish with the mum, and the mums and dad speaks Portuguese. They could speak all 3, by the way. And but I can tell you, so when I arrive there, I speak in English, so I'll confuse them completely. So why this diversity of life happened to me? Well, I feel a sense of nostalgia. You probably notice a little bit of my sense of longing for something lost. Why? Well, we all lose part of our life, but most people don't seem to mind too much. But I do speak to an audience that probably come from all over the place, over walks of life, and all of you feel the same. That when you move culturally, you move language, you move physically, you leave something behind. So I left behind the whole of Italy in 1949. I thought I would never go back. I was 9 years old. When I was 20, I abandoned all my youth, all my friends, all my girlfriends, not very many at the time, but every single one. Now, I reestablished contact with every single one of those people after many years. And then when I went back to Italy, I left Italy again, thinking that I would never go back. In fact, I never went back. But so leaving places and leaving entire worlds, entire languages has been a bit of a shock to my system. So that is my little excuse to try to bring things together. And I think you have helped me a lot in doing that. Now, the glue is certainly the common interest for communication things. I've been refusing to be fragmented.
And I heard a lot of good things about me, well beyond what I ever expected, by the way, so thank you very much. But as I said, there are probably motivations which are more irrational than what they appear to be. And I've been trying to seek through your talks and your interaction what actually is what drives me. And what drives me not in a particular positive way, but what I cannot not do. And that is still very hard. Now, I find that I cannot, with all the good intentions, I learned something in the last 3 days, and no one of you mentioned my extraordinary skills as an administrator. And so it's very important what people don't say. But then I knew that already. I managed to escape. I did manage to escape administration pretty much, and even when I searched for it, I kept at some distance. It's not surprising that I am, suppose, one of the co-chair of an organization that doesn't really exist yet, SANI. I just resigned, but I don't know whether I could resign because nobody actually responded to my letter. I'm serious about this. I resigned from a committee that I did run for 22 years in the university. It's the longest probably office bearer in the university, and nobody knew. And it's true. It's an organization which exists. We worked. We think we've done a reasonable job, quite a good job actually. But officially, I don't exist. I was chair of the Animal Ethics Subcommittee. That actually, as a chair, is not there. Has never been elected once back in 1990. I wrote letters saying, I'm here, do you mind replacing me? Okay, well, I said a few weeks ago, well, that's enough, I'm going to resign. But I still don't know whether I can resign because... So I'm well known to be involved in organizations that exist only in a quasi-existence. And perhaps there's a little bit of truth in that. I'd like to be at the edge. I'd like to have enough organization to do things, but not too much that I feel the burden of responsibility. So that's why. That's why I was very fortunate to have bosses, so to speak, superior to me, that were very effective, very efficient, still are, and they let me go on with my life in my rational disorganization. So tonight you heard some excellent talks from all different walks of life. You heard music, it's no surprise. Ian plays piano, and I don't know much of Ian except that he's a remarkable person. He really is a polymath. But what you don't know is that actually Ian doesn't know any music. If for music you mean to be able to read. It's like being a poet and writing without actually ever have mastered the skills of writing letters. So Ian is indeed, in the sense, a very genial person. He's entirely self-made, and he now can understand music. I don't know whether you can read it, but who cares? You can demonstrate that actually he can understand more music than most musicians. So this has been wonderful. But of course, Ian is more than that. I owe Ian a lot. He's one of my best young mentors, as I call them, because he has been supporting me in all the things which makes possible to achieve things, and we can achieve things together, both in correcting my English, correcting my science, correcting my statistics, and I say the same thing about Judy, by the way, and Judy has been a tremendous support in the sense. Her rigor in science was second to none. Perhaps this is why she punished herself very often by thinking that she had to do more and more and more. And this is probably one of the burdens that women do carry, that they think they have to do better than men to be recognized. Judy, you were just as good as any one of us. But there's something very positive in this, because Judy, like Ian, is discovering that there is something beyond science, and Judy's got a second career ahead of her, just like Ian has a second career in parallel to science. And so I owe them this example also, which to me was a dream, but they actually started, and I, in a sense, are really following them, going back to some of that. Well, Ian is just as good in computing, just as good in writing, he's just as good in just about everything as you realize. You realize we share with him a lot of things, also in adventures. Here he is up in Whyalla in one of the several races that I tried to entice him to participate. We just blown out of the water by a big storm in Whyalla. But we did many crossing together with Bill Blessing, of course, and in the Coorong's, and we discovered the beauty of the Coorong's together. Here is me taking a picture from my windsurfer before I usually fell off after taking a picture. And you can see here a very typical Ian Gibbins. Now, Ian said that he learned windsurfing from me. When Ian came back and Judy came to Adelaide, Ian had a few more kilograms on him. He had an easy life for many years, and I assume he was a bit of a slob. And so when I taught him windsurfing, I thought I was doing something very reasonable to an academic that was getting too fat for his benefit. And then I realized only later that he was going back to the sea, because I'm dead scared of the sea. I almost died in the sea a couple of times. But actually Ian was a true Aussie surfer in his youth. He could spend hours on the waves, and that's why you saw the picture of him in the middle of the waves, where I would never actually attempt to be, and if I find myself there, I'll be dead scared. So Ian had already that true love for the sea that certainly preceded meeting us in Flinders. But this time has been marvelous, of course. Here is Judy with enormous patience following us. Judy was also a good windsurfer, and the fact that she's no longer doing windsurfing is, I understand, the knuckles and the fingers don't let her do so, but she was also very good. They are good in everything, and they have been recognized. This is actually a wonderful celebration of the 40th birthday of Flinders, and I don't see them in this fashion very often, but neither do they see us in that fashion very often. I undertook as my task not only to be a good colleague in science, but to be also a good colleague in culture, tonight is culture. So I organized a meeting, happened to be near Naples, a wonderful place. So they came with me, Bill Blessing and Ian Gibbins, and lovely Sue, of course, came. But unfortunately not Judy. Judy was doing science. It's a great shame, but then they recovered and they visited Italy a number of times. But this is in Naples, a wonderful little place in a courtyard of Naples, and to me it was a pleasure to show them the bright side of Naples, because certainly there's plenty of dark side in Naples, I can assure you. But I think Ian was all taken by these more traditional places, art, and you could see indeed that there's something in the history that has some value, and I could see Ian thinking, well, perhaps one day I could be one of those ones. Now, he actually wrote at the time a few poems, but I didn't realize that he has been also an excellent writer. I know now. Ian is a poet, a writer. He published his poems. They've been published now in places, so his skills are really quite remarkable. I don't know whether you can read it anyway, but I just put it there just to show that after that trip, he wrote a few little poems just on the spur, and he gave me copies, and I'll cherish them now more than ever, because people will begin to sign them, as I saw just before. He was signing away his more recent writing. So this has been a very wonderful time. Ian now is well known not only in South Australia but around the country. He has been interviewed on the Radio National. He's an active contributor to the planning of the Festival of Ideas. He writes now quite regularly with the Australian Review of Books. And so his love of books, at least he got a good excuse to keep buying them. I'm trying to still find a good reason to continue to buy them, despite the fact that I cannot write that well. But perhaps time will tell. So this is, again, an example of every so often we meet. Laurie Geffen, who cannot be here, but he's here in friendship, was perhaps our mentor, is one of the other important mentors. Here is a similar picture. As I said, probably it's the only picture, so we keep showing the same picture, Ian, because they never see us again dressed in this funny way. Now, I should abandon for a moment Ian, because I'd like to be also pleased about other visitors, briefly. The gentleman on the right here normally doesn't look like that happy. Jim Burns is a mathematician, factotum from the United States, who I met here in Adelaide through common friends. And we became really very good friends, and he came very often here, and is in company now with Lera from Adelaide. And he organized many meetings talking about interaction, different scientific culture. He invited me many years, and I could never go, but I accepted the invitation to go for a few days, and the meeting happened to be a wonderful place in Italy, where he organized a meeting that was extraordinary complexity, and I was impressed by your ability to bring people together, certainly people from also for the eastern countries, and they all brought the big event was about radar technology, but actually was a good excuse to test all the different vodkas in the world, and I never realized there are so many type of vodkas from all the different countries at the time were not in war, sort of Georgia and Ukraine and Russia. So thank you, Jim, for making all the way here to stay with us and to spend time in this evenings, and I hope this gave a glimpse of what you have tried to do with me in a way is worthwhile, and we certainly are planning to continue something along those lines. Another person you just heard today is this remarkable person, Paolo Nocella. Paolo Nocella, when we met him, he was the head of Alitalia in South Australia, was also the chair of the Chamber of Commerce, Italy-Australia Chamber of Commerce. He was, after that, became chairman of Ethnic Affairs Commission. He has an enormous knowledge of history, of different cultures, and he is one of the rare example of true Latinist. He is an official translator from English to Latin and vice versa. And if you have any old letter or old diplomas, as many English people do have, apparently they send them all the way to the southern hills of Adelaide for Paolo to translate them. Paolo was also had a go to politics. He became a senator in the upper house in South Australia in the Labour Party, and of course we were good friends for that too. And but first of all, he's a bon vivant and a dear friend. Has been a remarkable person to see every so often, and his lovely wife Leonie. They did actually run a bed and breakfast, believe it or not, in a place where Ian knows very well because that's where he goes windsurfing. And I only realize now that they could have actually met much earlier, if nothing else, when in a winter cold like now, Ian would have probably had a coffee there without realizing. So we cherish your friendship, but also thank you for coming and sharing your experience with us. Now you recognize that happy face on the right. Now, I took with my camera. You can complain that my camera is not a very good one, but it's very hard to take a picture of Linda and at the same time of Susan Greenfield on the left, our, if you like, thinking residents a few years ago in neuroscience, because they move very fast. They are very active, and so Linda has joined from the very beginning. I was privileged to be in the small committee that chose her. I did not have any doubt about the fact that she was the best choice, and time actually proven right. Linda has been really the driving force, talking about the subtle ability of bringing people together from a fairly minimal position she always had. In fact, we never knew what position she had, whether the money was available 6 months ahead, but through the Premier Department that was maintained alive. And so all the ideas that Susan Greenfield had, plenty of them, and all the ideas that some of us had as well, which are plenty as well, then Linda made them happen. So everything you heard about the Royal Institution, about the Bragg Initiative, about the Science at Southern Square events, everything you heard is really due to the active participation and organization of Linda. So Linda, I really cherish your friendship and the fact that you have been also a very good mate in this activity, and I'd like to think that will continue. Now, this brings me to Susan Greenfield. Of course, Susan is a remarkable person, as you may imagine. She lives at many different levels. These days live at the higher levels more than the lowest one, but when she came, we had lovely conversations. Yes, believe it or not, I could have a conversation with Susan Greenfield. In this moment, we are both silent, which is very seldom happen. But I could get my courage and have some argument with her. And she is quite a remarkable thinker. Not surprisingly, she became a thinker in residence for a few months, and she gave a jolt of energy to South Australia. And of course, you know that when people come, famous people come and they go, they leave nothing. But I think some of us realized there was something to be gained by retaining something that she started and make it ours. And I think most of the things happening now in South Australia, because of her visit, are really the activity of many of my colleagues that have been helping me in neurosciences and beyond, of course, of what you heard already. Another character. Well, you saw this a picture. One day you may change your hairstyle, then we will not recognize you, Ronnie. But Ronnie, as you realize, we met at the beach. We are good friends there. She composed music while she walks. I compose my talks while I'm windsurfing. And that's why we never met before, because it's a very solitary activity. But actually, Ronnie is a remarkable person, as you realize. She has enthused me to go back to music at the expenses of her good followers and some of your expenses. I think that I've been very pleased to be able to realize that I can still play a little bit my 6 strings of a guitar. But it has been a very challenging exercise, because here is a person that is enormously creative, enormously different from academia, and yet has all the hallmark of a deep understanding and rigor of academia. I think that's my tenet, that actually scientists are a bit of imaginative and creative, and artists are really hard workers and very rigorous. So the two things really merge in the two fields. I was enthused to play. In fact, at her concert, really, I didn't realize until afterwards that it's quite a remarkable event because I was really a nobody, and I'm a nobody in the field. And to be up there playing at the Governor, which is a venue where very important people from around the world come and play, it was really quite challenging. And fortunately, the background noise was much higher than tonight, so it didn't matter too much. But it was a great satisfaction. So thank you for asking me, and I'll cherish that. Of course, among the various activities, Ian showed me dancing with Lee Warren, and this is actually that famous event, and I was not trying to dance here, but then, as I said, I move a lot my hands, and I move a lot, apart from talking a lot. That has been one of the most rewarding experiences that I had with all the people here, because, as you see, I believe that indeed the brain is involved in everything. In this sense, we agree, Bill, entirely on this, if we don't agree in everything else. Here's a wonderful picture with one of those evenings. And then, of course, that atmosphere was mostly because of a visit of Susan Greenfield a number of times. And Susan was, you can see there, the little face of Salmon and Roy Goldie. At the end, you can see here the two formidable ladies opposite, Susan Greenfield on the left, and at the time, Anne Edward, our Vice Chancellor. Really, they are the ones that made possible many of these events. Now, I do like women, but I am dead scared of them. And I had good reason, because when you are in the presence of two brains like this, it's really quite a challenge just to understand not only the intellect talking, but actually the fact that there are also women talking. And so it's something that escaped to us, male, I must say, it certainly escaped to me. But I was quite relaxed about it, because I thought that we were in tune with many things. Then, of course, Flinders was kind enough to give an honorary degree to Susan. And may I say, actually, that I began to think that Anglo-Saxon dresses are pretty funny. And Judy, I never thought I would see you with such a hat, but actually, you are impressive. But that really spurred my interest. So when I was privileged to be recognized as one of the 40th, recognized for the 40th birthday of Flinders, everybody was given a prize by the Chancellor, and so everybody had the hat and so on. Of course, I never had a hat. I had a hat of the Goliardi, which is the student in the 1960s. But then I was very much against all the stuff, so I never wear it. But I had the one from those times. Here is. So I arrived to this fantastic occasion where everybody had this very. With my medical hat, which I had to remove a few things because when you're a student, they hang on things which are, particularly doctors, which are not exactly the thing you will carry in public. So, you see, tongue-in-cheek I enjoyed because everybody seemed to have enjoyed. They recognized I was trying to make fun of the whole situation, including Anne. But they couldn't say anything because there was the formal way in which the Italian dress when they do these funny things. Well, funny for funny, there you are again. You see all these people sitting there, very serious. I realized just how two top women like Anne and Susan can look so distant and disparate, and even women can actually not engage so easily with each other. This is best experience, okay? Women, when they're tough, can be very tough. But, may I say, they didn't last long, because they click immediately together, and it's thanks for this clicking that a lot of things happen in South Australia, by the way. So thank you, Anne, again. Now, Anne saw all these events, and Ed was, when was Chancellor, when the 40th birthday, she thought, and correctly saw, that she wanted to do something equivalent to all the things that we did in the Governor. But she did in a grand scale. She invited about 500 people or something like that, and she sat every single one by names, and she orchestrated the whole event, and it's not bad actually, in fact quite remarkable. There she is. You can see a marvelous event where you're speaking, a lot of other people spoke, and that shows that even sociologists can be good theatre organizers. Talking about theatres, what about my dear friend Teresa and Peter, her partner? Teresa Crea has been for a long time the director of the Doppio Teatro Parallelo. Daniela has been member of the board for many years, supporting, and Teresa is an emanation of Flinders as a student of Italian. She has this link with Italy, of course, she's Italian as well, and she created this theatre where many of you may have enjoyed in the past many years, where the company was the only one in South Australia was asked many times at the festival, the Adele Festival, to participate. And her initial compositions, in a way, I call them that way, were in two languages, Italian and English, and everybody could understand, because most of the Italians, all the Italians don't know the English very well, and vice versa, of course. Australians don't know very much Italian. Marvelous events, and of course then she changed in the most advanced theatre, and has been one of the most exciting times for the theatres in South Australia. This is some of the masks that were made actually by members of the company. I don't know whether Peter made them, remarkable. And so here is cutting the cake of the 20th anniversary of Doppio. Doppio means double, and parallelo means parallel. So this, although this chapter in Their Life is Closed, has left a big mark in South Australian art and culture. Now, talking about, you saw a beautiful painting there. I was privileged to be painted by a real painter. Now, when I was young, some of you may know, I was also trying to be a painter. And here is one of my first paintings when I was 9. As soon as I arrived to Argentina, I painted my rooms because I wanted to, there were no photographs there, or at least I didn't have a camera. And I sent this to my grandma that was left behind in Italy. So I painted all my house, and I still got these paintings. And of course, I got a bit better afterwards. I discovered a perspective, so that's why my love of art. But I abandoned very quickly when I realized that actually I was barely mimicking what actually Picasso did when he was 1.5. And we cannot not include our dear visitors' friends, Mario and Loredana Picazzini. And this is in their hometown, home little village, home little house in the mountains. And Mario Picazzini, tongue-in-cheek, he makes fun of all of us scientists. He's right, but he's a scientist himself. I made fun of his psychoanalysis as well. I read Freud, and I am tremendously impressed by Freud. I'm less tremendously impressed by the fact that many of his followers, not Mario by the way, they think they live in another sphere. In the meantime, science went ahead and tend to bypass them. But I think Mario has a point. There's a degree of, if you like, obtusiveness in scientists of the brain, thinking that everything they can actually study is the brain, forgetting that indeed our human interactions is made of things which are slightly, let's say, some distance from the brain itself, although I claim it's part of the brain. So I deny that psychology can live by itself. And in fact, the best joke I have about psychology, and I say this is also tongue-in-cheek, the psychologists are people that live on the 5th floor, but they don't think they have any floor below them. They think they're actually on the ground. And so they don't think that they need to know anything about the brain to be able to help people. That's the very thing that I'm trying to change. We have enormously interesting conversation and argument with of course, Mario. Now, Mario is a remarkable person because he has created a new environment in Lecco. This is his little house, and Loredana, they done up this little old house, and where they hold meetings, true intellectual meetings of a convivial type. They call them convivio. I'm a very fortunate member and one of the founding members, and he organizes also meetings with psychiatrists and psychologists about real matters of patients. And so it's a tremendous passion of bringing people of different walks of life together. So I've been very fortunate to be part of that. Every time I go there, I'm welcome, and they organize special events for me. And so they have been my sounding board in the very tough Italian environment where everybody seemed to be very cultural. I was noticed some time ago. But they responded very well, because one thing good about Australia, that we are much better in breaking those barriers. They can create an environment, and I think between the two we can do a lot of things. I was fortunate to be able to join my science and my friendship with these friends. You can see there are some on books in occasion of a meeting that we organized in Varena, which is just a little town below. And Loredana and Mario were kind enough to organize a meal for us in the afternoon. So you can see here Loredana organizing some, I believe it's tea. My gosh, she provided tea to a British person. How dare she? This is an example of the meetings that we participate discussing under the sun, a beautiful spot on earth. And Mario is a superb cook. He makes breads, and Loredana as well, by the way. And they created a little enclave to make bread and pizzas and so on. It's easy enough to be there, ready to eat, and just doing nothing. But of course, Mario is very good also in eating. Now you notice Mario didn't have a tie there. I asked him to come in totally informally tonight, and he would have come totally informally, but he said, well, I brought this special tie I bought for you, Marcello, to wear at your event, all the way from Italy. And so I assumed that you have actually your tie because you refused simply not to show it up, that actually you bought a tie just for this event. So congratulations. But actually I never seen you with a tie before, and I might never see you again. So that is a very great privilege from you. And of course, after all this, he's a hard worker. Hard work in every possible sense. He still sees patients. You know, actually, that patients in psychoanalysis are not easy guys or girls, for that matter. And they are long years, perhaps decades. And he doesn't abandon them. So he's quite a remarkable person in the sense. Now, with him, we organized a couple of things. You heard about some music. Here is, we're talking about music, and then I was playing there with the proper musicians as well. So you were not the first, but actually that was the opening of my second career. And whether I choose you, Ronnie, here, or Lecco, time will tell, we'll see. And here is, at the end, there's a fantastic jazz band plus a classic clarinet player. Okay, well, how can I not move to one of my other senior mentors? The first was, of course, Jeff Buster, that brought me to Australia, Laurie Geffen, that brought me to Adelaide, and our good friend here, John Chalmers, that really made Flinders what has been for the past 30 years or so. Well, as you see, he's at ease with a proper dress. He's at ease also with a bat in his hand. And he's at ease in just about every situation I've seen you, John. And of course, your lovely wife. So, no, I take back. That's actually the wife of somebody else, so I had to be careful. That's the wife of somebody that follow you, actually. So, Linda Wynne, I'll come to that too. You won't escape. Anyway, what about these pictures? Very young on the left there, the time that actually Flinders started. At the bottom, the first founding professor, Laurie Geffen on the left, and then you can see there the professor of anatomy, professor of biochemistry, Michael Berry, and they're all having the very good lunches that then they claim that they were terrible for the health of people. And Alex Hume, of course, she has been also a tremendous force, a dear friend, and I'm sorry she couldn't come, but she has perfect reason not to be here. And then, of course, we moved to another dear colleague, friend, that followed in a difficult task of running the medical school. John did, actually. I take one step back. I was one of the two people that compelled John to take on the task of running the medical school when we thought was in trouble. Mostly because the people who wanted to run were, in my view, very dangerous. And I don't know why John actually, to some degree, listened to some of our requests and took on the job, in addition to being head of the Department of Medicine and being an internationally renowned scientist. He did with enormous aplomb by simply getting up 2 hours early every day and going to bed 2 hours later. And towards the end, you admitted that it was beginning to be a bit hard, but nobody knew that you were doing that, and you were kind enough to let us know only afterwards. Somebody that followed you is Lyndon Wynne. Lyndon Wynne also was from a scientist in his own merit, a good physician, and he became our dean in very difficult times, and so active that in fact that's why this picture is there, because we always thought there were actually two of him that were interchanging when one was too tardy or when there was his sosia was coming up and doing the job. So it's fair to say that all the things that happened required the abilities that I simply don't have and admire more than I sometimes give impression to believe, that administrators and good administration is so important, so rare, that it's very important to identify it. And I think we owe Flinders a lot because it was well administered in the sense. And Linda, you have been a pearl in that, allowing us to do everything we wanted and yet following us and encouraging whenever it was necessary. Here are the two heroes from Flinders. And I come to my younger colleague, the other one, my fourth sort of junior mentor, John von Neste first, Ian and Judy you heard, and Simon. Simon came as a young British young scientist looking for something to do in Australia, and I'm glad that you became just as Australian as I am, which we're still attached to Great Britain and to Italy, but we feel very strongly Australian. Well, we got married just before we came here, and we both have our children born here. This is a typical mark, and we still choose to be here, and so that's the important thing. That's what to me means being Australian. Now, you've done an enormous, beautiful career. This is an event in the States. That is not my camera moving. it was actually suddenly, as I were announcing his prize, a very important prize in gastroenterology, really coveted prize in the whole world of scientific endeavor, there was a bomb scare. And I was moved by people trying to escape, and so we were all actually truly evacuated. So we never heard his speech about accepting this wonderful, and this is a side event where we were reunited after about an hour of a bit of a turmoil. Nothing happened, but it could have happened. And we are in good spirits, and we continue to argue just like we did every day since. And how can I not come to the very last sweet side of my life? You recognize a very young Daniela there. Well, that's not very far after I met her, and it's not surprised that I fell in love with her. I might be biased, but of course that's what the prerogative of a person in love is. So Daniela had the incredible sense of appearing demure, appearing humble, appearing open to anything, and yet so warm and steady. You know, when my son asked me, well, when he was, having his first love difficulties, he said, well, how do you know that when you find the right woman? Well, I said to him, what happened to me, I'll tell you. I was just in the mountain with Daniela, and I'm not doing very many difficult things. I didn't put the rocks in you, indeed. But because when I look at you, I remember we were going back to Turin after a walk in the mountains, and I asked myself, do I want to be with her when she's age and me too? And the answer was yes. So we're still here. We are aging with grace, I hope. But certainly that's the answer. So I'd never had any doubt, ever, from the beginning, and I'm very fortunate because I was right. Because, of course, we are very different. You realize, Daniela, I didn't put rocks on your rucksack, but I put so many other burdens that I don't understand how you can still be married to me. But, of course, Daniela was something that at the time I didn't realize, mind you, I was so interested in her mind. So soon after, in fact, very soon after I was invited by Jeff Bester to come to Australia, I received a quick note from Jeff, who I met a few months before, a telegram saying, I got some money for you. Do you want to come as a postdoc for 18 months? And I went with Daniela. I told her, well, do you want to marry me and go to Australia? So this is a story I tell everyone because it's true. And she said yes immediately. So that's the other thing. Daniela followed me. Now that may have been the time, may have been an Italian tradition. But my gosh, Daniela was already a very independent young woman. She was independent because her mother was brought up working mother. Her father was not able to support the family. Her rest of the family was really accustomed to some degree, so she had to make for herself. And so she was quite a determined, as you realize, autonomous woman. And yet she followed me. Now I gave that for granted then. I look back and say, well, how on earth could you have done something like this if not for love that you had for me? And of course I knew that, but now it's coming to truth. So there you are. I look very surprised that you said vowels. Of course, by the way, let me say Daniela was incredibly supportive because she came from a Catholic family. I don't think she was Catholic after meeting me after a while, but her family was incredibly Catholic, which means very traditional. So for them, or for Daniela to accept not to get married in church, we were the minority of Italians not married in church at the time. And we never did. So this is a civil marriage, one of the very few in Turin. I don't remember what the guy told us to do, but I'm sure it worked. And then we came to Australia. Here's the departure for, again, my second departure after the first, my third departure, from Italy to Argentina, back to Italy, and now leaving for Australia. It was supposed to be for 18 months, but somehow I knew that something was going to change my life forever, and our life forever. Now, we got married, and before coming to Australia, of course, we went on a honeymoon. Here is the first morning after the first night. Now, you must know that I took her as a surprise to a wonderful place in the French coast from Turin. The problem is that from Torino to the French coast, there's about 300 kilometers of winding roads, and we traveled all night. And she arrived very sick, poor girl, poor Daniela. And yet, I think in the morning you were fine, and you realized that actually the beginning was not an easy things to follow me all the time, and you endure so well. You followed me on horses. You followed me on top of churches, because that eventually was the only place where I could be on churches, on top of them rather than inside them. You followed me to South America. We went to visit my brother there. I don't deny that on the right, ignore the dancers there. In fact, but on the left there's a fantastic baiana or a local that looked like tremendously like Daniela, and I fell in love with her too on the left there. And I must tell you that actually we were invited to dance in the Brazilian carnival, in the Rio Carnival, and they gave us all these dresses, and really wonderful, in the very famous favela, the place where you wouldn't enter unless you are invited. The police doesn't go in. Very nice people, until we realized they were dressing up as clowns, because our way of dancing was regarded by them pretty primitive, and I recognize this now, but I fell in love with Brazilian music despite of that, but I don't dance it anymore. Daniela followed me in many meetings, not as many as I would have wanted. That's why she met many of you for the first time in the last 2 days, because she hasn't met very many of the scientists I met around the world. And that's probably one of the reasons why it's a bit of a sorrow. But then she had a parallel life, and the same applies to her too. I only met a few of her friends. But this in the early times, until somebody arrived, as you know, here is lovely Andrea, and we had a really quite lovely united family for the reason. Andrea, you have been one of the marvelous reasons for us to remain together in the very positive way, and now with the 2.5 grandchildren, even more reasons for us. Daniela followed me even at sea, windsurfing. First tentatively on the top left, then not quite sure on the right, and then finally taking off. And also she decided that that's fine to show that she could do it, but after that then she had her mind that she preferred to do other things. So she ignored my windsurfing so much that the time that I crossed the Gulf with another friend, a second crossing alone with another friend without anybody knowing, she didn't know they were crossing, and she rang our neighbor saying, well, are they crossed? No, they couldn't have gone. It's a terrible storm. So she went to the theater instead, and she didn't realize that I was in the middle of the Gulf, possibly dying. So she relied on my safety far more than you needed, Daniela, because I risked far more. You were trusting me far more than you actually should have. Well, in Italy, it's a say that if you want to take somebody to the end of the earth, you take them to Egypt. Well, you follow me to Egypt as well, the pyramids. You went by yourself a number of times, and your face and your expression is a mixture between lovely and expressive and mysterious. That's what I like about Daniela. There's something about mystery, which I believe, of course, all women have, but I think Daniela beats them all. The happy smile of Daniela is something that follows me all the time. And if I didn't have the smile, and the few times in my life that she didn't smile at me, I was lost. She can look at you in a way that there's no way you cannot refuse. But she's lovely, of course. Flowers, she loves flowers. Again, you won't see us very often in this sort of vestiture. She followed me also in these new adventures about culture and about the visit of Susan Greenfield. Visit that was actually enlarged in our knowledge about local people. You saw before Linda, and now you see here on the left Amanda Tyndall from Great Britain. Amanda is here and was here this morning too. Amanda is a remarkable person. She's the one that started the Café Scientifique, which, with despite of the French name, was an English invention. It's something I always dreamed to do in South Australia. Well, she's the one that started. And she's also a superb writer. In fact, all the article I wrote for the magazines recently and the newspaper, she corrected. She's a superb editor. And I should feel very good about it, because, of course, I need a lot of the support. And I feel pretty good that she helped me a lot. But I felt, well, it's not surprising. You know, she's English and I'm Italian, so quite correctly, like Bill correct me and Ian and Simon. But I was quite happy to realize that she has the same treatment for everyone. When she lent me or gave me the most recent book of Susan Greenfield on identity, and we read it independently, and then I commented and said, yes, very good, but And she said, "Oh, don't speak to me. That's incredible rambling and terrible writing. That, I could have helped writing that much better." So for a person like Susan that makes a living out of writing books, that's quite an admission. So perhaps I'm not so bad after all, Amanda, but I can do with all the help that I can. Hello there. Anyway, you have been a tremendous part of the team that Linda was referring about, things happening in South Australia. Well, Daniela, you follow me also in the mountains, this time not with rocks, but with the gear that we needed to be in the wilderness, that is up in Oregon, where we were guests indeed of Alan. And so we sometimes escaped the lab and we went first to normal skiing, and then I took Daniela in the real wilderness, they call it wilderness, places where you're supposed to take safety system for bears. And then I said, well, Daniela's a bit scared of bears, so am I. And it's a bear country. And they said, well, how do you do to know when there's a bear? Oh, very easy, You just, but first of all, take little bells, you keep them and they know you're there, they keep away. Yeah, but, when you see drop-ins of bears, how do you recognize between the brown bear and the grizzlies? The brown bears are quite fine, but the grizzlies, they attack you anyway. Well, it's easy. Look, the brown bears drop-ins are brown, of this size, about roundish, and there are about 3 or 4, so you know there's a brown bear. And what about a grizzly? Oh, the grizzly got a bit black, and they got little bells inside. So we camped in a place where we were asking to put all our food in the trees. I thought it was crazy, because if I were to be a bear and I arrive and the food is hanging from a tree, look at the tent, I say, well, which one I go for? And so I thought but anyway, we followed the advice. We survived, and Daniela thrived there, and she did very well, and I managed to take her to the top of one of the mountains. That had been one of my main achievements, and Daniela followed me even there. And so this has been a great privilege to be with Daniela. I said before, I gave a lot of burdens to Daniela. Sometimes I felt Daniela was turning her back on me. But fortunately, every single time she turned around and she smiled again to me. So I thank you for this, Daniela, because this has been the most precious rediscoveries of you every single time. So we are still together from the beginning, and we're still together now. Now we are together, we build a house. You heard about a house. Some of you may not have been there, and I'd like to think that you all come and visit me. But the house has not happened by chance. I was lucky enough to be in company of a good artist. In fact, I realized he's a good artist, friend of the other artists, of whom I don't have very many pictures, Janice Lally. And I showed the picture of my paintings. I forgot to mention that because I really was hoping they would actually want to buy for the South Australian Gallery and for the Flinders Gallery. But actually, you're a good friend that supported me in that area, and I realized you're also a good friend of John Maitland. Now, John Maitland happened to be our architect. John Maitland didn't realize what he was going in for, to become architect of Daniela and Marcello. Here is on the left the block of land that had looked like before John Maitland. Here you see John is here with us tonight, and Daniela discussing every single detail, and here is at the bottom right finally deciding to go and build. Now it took many months of planning, many months in which we both learn each other's interests and weaknesses. I will not disclose very many of them because there are more weaknesses in me than in John, but John has been a marvelous person because very few architects will be interacting with their clients as much as he did with me. And voila! The house was built. We haven't looked back since, John. I think you created the condition for us to not only to be happy in the family, but to remain in Adelaide and to remain in Australia and to come back every time we can. Daniela, on the meantime, not only followed me, but he went ahead. And it's a great satisfaction in my life to acknowledge all the things that Daniela has done. In 1998, she founded the first web page for Italians of Australian-Italian origin in the Southern Hemisphere. It's a web page which still runs and is run by the goodwill of very few people. Sometimes they recognize her, but she puts a lot of effort. And is well known around the world. And I can tell you that gives a fantastic window to the rest of the world of Australian women of Italian origin. It's a bilingual. I encourage you to type Australia Donna and that's it, and you get on the web easily. It's a fantastic site. She is very involved in Women's Affair. Every 8th of March, which is the Day of Women, she organizes the entire community of women of Italian origin around some event. She was also chosen by the Premier to be one of the Premier Advisory Council, Women Council. And here she is at the back there with the most formidable collection of women, if I ever had any doubts again about women. And the only thing I can say that actually our Premier was very wise to have the group of women, and which seem to operate in silence, but I understand they are very, very effective in changing the entire the hard life in South Australia. And I was very privileged and proud for Daniela to be one of them. Daniela has a second life too, as you realize. She represents, apart from working with refugees as a doctor in the Migrant and Women Health Centre, she sees the most extraordinary stories, personal stories of devastation from wars. She sees all the women migrants that come to South Australia practically. So she goes every few years through the whole spectrum from San Salvador to Bosnia, to Croatia, to now to Darfur and so on. So she came home with incredible stories, which I wish I could write, and I wish Daniela would take time to write, because she has grown as a person in contact with these people enormously. She takes great pride in her multicultural views of life, and I share that. And so because of that, she has been elected by the Italians in Australia, one of the 4 representatives of Australians to the Italian government. Not the parliament, but it's a mini parliament of 65 people elected around the world, and Daniela is one of them for the second time. She has been elected, it's now 10 years, coming to 10 years. 10 years of experience with Italian politics is certainly quite a lot, I can tell you. But more important, coming in contact with all this diaspora of Italians from all different countries that share the common origin. And so I've been privileged to be some part of that exercise as an accompanying person. I discover how wonderful it is to be an accompanying person. I can read my books and my magazines while she's working. But then she has been recognized. Here was the Minister for Foreign Affairs, and giving her a recognition that corresponds here to an Australian order. So Daniela is a Grand Ufficiale. So you have to bow to her next time you see her with these things in grand pomp. We never had the opportunity yet, but I'd love to see you in that situation. So I'm very proud of you for that, Daniela, because I learned a lot in politics from you. She has been very active also around the world. When we visited South America, I was on holiday. She participated to a remarkable women encounter of Italian and South American and European women, remarkable women involving a lot of resistance against oppression, but certainly for liberation of women in South America. And Daniela penetrated easily in that environment because she spoke their language, not Spanish. She spoke Italian, but they understood her very well, never the same, because she spoke the same, talking about a hard language. There might be another one to add to your repertoire. Daniela is still in her youth. She's growing in her spirit, she's growing in maturity, and I'd like to think that we'll be forever together until indeed death takes us apart. I'd like to end just with a little peanut. Now, I like to write a book. I buy millions of books. I've written a couple of books with other people, but I never really wrote something I like to write. I'm still in search for what to write. Well, I learn a lot of things. It may be too late, I don't know. That's why I'm not retiring, because I like to think that it's still my productive life, part of it. I feel the tensions that I'd like to share with you in the last few minutes. The tensions of the old being wise and the young being enthusiastic, the old being conceptual, the young being factual in details. I worry about how much detail we need before we make moves in science. I worry about how little details some of the concepts can develop. It's a tension that I haven't resolved myself. My colleagues know that I come from anatomy, I moved to physiology, structure and function. The tension between structure and function. I like to think that I overcame that easily by talking about the fourth and fifth dimensions. I worry, I have this tension between studying humans as they are, whether they are diseased or normal. I don't make the distinction anymore. And so that's why I'm not a very good clinician. I couldn't be a good clinician. I don't make the distinction very clearly. I don't distinguish normal people from abnormal people. And I'm not interested in the sickness themselves, except on what they produce in the individuals as a whole. So that doesn't make me a very good doctor, or perhaps it could make me a good psychiatrist. In fact, I was supposed to be a psychiatrist. I was offered a lectureship in psychiatry, believe it or not, in Italy. I'm pleased I did not accept, because if I'm not a good clinician, I would have been a disastrous psychiatrist. But I sense this tension between the quantification, the details, the quantities, and the qualities, observing things for what they look like the rose is red. I do appreciate the rose just because it's red. And I don't know whether that is in contrast with understanding what the redness means in physics. That's the tension I feel. And I share that with you. I feel the tension between science with its rigor and adventure, taking risks, between planning and jumping into the void, about being a scholar, closing my lab and writing my books or reading my books and being socially involved. I feel the tension because I realize I cannot do both so well. Very few people succeed. I'm trying, but it's very hard, and so I admit my failures in the sense that all these tensions are taking me apart. But one thing is bringing me together in a way, is that all these activities depend on the brain. So I believe the brain is involved in just about everything, in normal and abnormal behavior, in politics, in economics, is involved in philosophy, religion, even science. Even science has the basis on which the brain works. So I'm increasingly interested in that aspect. And I believe that the world is open. I'm a very rigorous scientist, but I believe there are no laws. This is a total invention of the people that centuries ago thought that the world was driven by a lawyer, by some legislator. There are no laws in the universe. They look like there are, but they are not. And the earlier we realize, the better it is, because the world is open. Maybe partially predictable, in many cases it's not, but it certainly is not planned and is not predetermined. And it doesn't invalidate at all my science, quite the opposite. But the world is open. This means that we should look ahead all the time. Nothing is that predictable, and the fact that we're all together is a good example. It was not predictable at all. Certainly was attempted with plan, but not predictable. And I'd like just to finish to say, well, I believe that actually Daniela I have been fortunate. Behind any good man, there's a fantastic woman. There's no doubt about it. But I'd like to think at the end of my life that behind an exceptional woman, there's also a good man. Thank you.